Yeah. Are we on? Okay. I apologize for the late start of the meeting, but we had an executive session meeting real quickly, and that has now concluded. And Mr. Rob Caves is going to give us a presentation on electronic voting. And let's say stand up for the pledge, establish quorum, and let Rob give us his presentation. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Molly, can you call the roll?
Yes. President Don Wells.
Here.
Vice President Marilyn Stout. Second Vice President Al Roper. Was Al calling in?
Is Al calling
Jerry?
in? Jerry,
He's
is
not
Al calling
absent.
in?
Yes.
Secretary Molly Knott's here. Treasurer William Tubb. Director Ron Spooner.
Here.
And Director Scott DeFilippis.
Here.
Okay, we have established quorum. There was proof of notice for this meeting given 48 hours in advance, and the meeting is now open. At this time, I would like to introduce Rob Caves, who is our attorney from Becker, and he is going to give us a presentation regarding electronic voting, which has been a community interest, and I've heard comments that the board's not interested in electronic voting, and I think that I'd like you to hold your opinions until you have a presentation and it's evaluated, then we decide as a community what we need to do. Please.
All right. Okay, I'm Rob Caves with Becker and Polyakov, and we serve as general counsel for the community association. I've done a number of things with the community, been in a number of meetings. As was stated, I was asked to come and talk about electronic voting. So we're going to talk about a couple general things with electronic voting, then talk about some specific services my firm offers, and then talk about some concerns regarding electronic voting. So the first thing to understand about electronic voting is it is specifically authorized by Chapter 720. Chapter 720, which is the Florida Homeowners Association Act that governs communities like yours, was amended in 2015 to authorize electronic voting by community associations. Electronic voting really didn't start until 2016. The statute goes into effect in July of each year, so it's really the next year that starts happening. The statute has a number of specific requirements for electronic voting, and the statutory section, if you want to go look it up later, is section 720.317, Florida statutes. And what it says is that the board may authorize the use of electronic voting. The board may not mandate the use of electronic voting. So if your board decides that for the next member's vote, whether that's voting to amend your documents or to authorize something or to elect the next round of directors, that is an option. It is not a mandate. The board cannot say you must vote electronically. The board must continue to allow owners to vote by proxy or to vote by written ballot, just like you've always done. Come to the meeting and vote, turn it in advance. None of that can go away by law. This is just a third way to participate. The other thing to understand about electronic voting is this is not email voting. This is not a situation where you send Jerry an email where the subject line says, "My vote," and then you write in the email, "I vote yes, sign your name." That's not this. What this is it's a service that is hosted by a service provider. Becker and Polyakov is partnered with a technology company, and we have a service called BP Ballot. There are a number of other companies that offer this service. All of them, while they all have their own specific features and idiosyncrasies, are essentially the same thing. What it is, it's a website that you pre-register with through the association by giving them your email address. Then using that email address, you are verified and you're given a specific unique password. And then during the period of time when voting is allowed, you log in with that uniquely assigned password, and it shows your name and address and your parcel, and you vote on whatever the questions are, and you submit that vote. And it's on a website, and then the association has another website that they log into at the time of the election or the meeting that shows them the results of that electronic vote. Now, there's a number of specific statutory requirements that any platform that offers electronic voting must comply with. The first is you have to be able to register and check that you're actually going to be able to vote before the voting goes live. You have to be allowed to, get your password, get your email address in, log on to the website, see that it works before the voting is live. The system also must be able to separate your unique identification from your vote for the directors. It has to be able to track that, but then separate it so no one can see who you voted for with respect to the election of directors. Other votes do not have to be secret by law, but they can be set up to be secret. But for the election of directors, by statute, it must do that. By statute, it must create a record that can be verified and inspected, just like any other record of the community, after the election. So the association is given that information and has to maintain it, and the service provider, regardless of who it is, has to be able to do that. Store that so there can be recounts, that sort of thing. So that's the technical specifications. The statute does not specifically talk about what internal security controls have to be maintained. It just says these things have to be kept confidential, they have to be kept secret, you have to have an ability to separate this information under certain circumstances. So I cannot speak to any other provider's specific security and encryption protocols in complying with the statute. What I can say with respect to Becker and Polyakov and the service that we provide is that it is the same level of encryption and obtains the same certifications that internet banking platforms use. So online credit card payments or online account transfers, that type of encryption is the encryption that the service we use and partnered with is certified to comply with. My understanding is that other providers have similar levels of encryption. Again, if the association moved forward with another provider, which we don't have a problem with, and we'll assist them in setting that up as well, we'd want to verify what their security controls are. So there are the same type of encryption that internet banking uses is what our service uses, and my understanding is kind of the industry standard with respect to security. As with any level of security, the concern is always at the user end. So if you give someone your email address or your password and they use it, that would obviously be a problem. The key control that we use is we get the email address from you, and we have to know it is from you. And we put controls in the sign-up process to ensure that, John Smith, owner of Lot 101, is the John Smith that gave us this email address for Lot 101. So there are, real-world security controls on top of the encryption online security controls. So that's kind of the focus of security that we do. Currently, if you go online to look up information about BP Ballot, some information is currently online, but they're taking everything down June 1st for an upgrade that goes live in September. So after this, if you go look it up and you can't find much information about that service, that's why it'll all be upgraded come September. There's a few procedural issues to understand with respect to electronic voting from the association side. And this would apply with regardless of what service provider you use. The board cannot just, at a regular board meeting, meaning 48 hours posted notice board meeting, decide to use electronic voting. The board meeting where electronic voting is authorized is a board meeting that requires 14 days mailed and posted notice, similar to other actions that require that type of notice. So there'd have to be a board meeting that gets special notice before it could go live with electronic voting. That has to be done early enough before an election or a vote that you can register, verify your computer works with the platform, etc. So, you know, just making up stuff. Haven't had this conversation with the board about even proceeding, but say you wanted your next annual meeting in March to use this, you would want to get the ball rolling in the fall so you had plenty of time to make it work. Again, and I just want to stress this again, is that it's an option. The statute does not permit the association to mandate any one vote in a particular manner. So if the board were to move forward with it, it would just be another way you can vote. You cannot be forced to do it that way. For that to happen, the statute would have to be amended substantially. I have never not heard of any appetite from the legislature to do that. So if the association were to move forward with it, it would be an option. If the association were to elect to move forward with it, they can use it at a meeting and they don't have to authorize it again. They have that as a kind of standing authorization after you have that one board vote with 14 days notice. The other requirement in the statute is that any electronic voting process has to comply with your governing documents provisions for elections and member voting. Fortunately, your documents with respect to election of directors follow very similar to what the Condominium Act requires in the election of directors, which means you have advanced notice, advanced nomination, a closed period when nominations have to be received, and then you use secret ballots. Very similar to how condominiums vote. And that's very consistent with using this process because you're not taking nominations from the floor of the meeting where the election is held like some associations do. So in my opinion, your documents are consistent with doing this type of voting. So I don't see a legal impediment to doing it. Ultimately, like so many things, it is a business decision for the association and the board to make in determining what is in the best interest of the association. Personally, I'm agnostic to some degree on how you vote as long as we do it right. Practically, I have attended every election you've had since turnover. You have a great group of volunteers who come out at those elections and count all that paper, and they do a wonderful job. But practically speaking, your community, in my experience, and now I'm stepping away from the legal issue and just talking about from my personal experience, associations of this size and of this nature, you have relatively affluent. Everyone's got internet access. Everyone's got a computer, except for probably a diminishing percentage of people. My guess, in my experience, is the first time you do it, you'd probably get 30% participation. The third time you do it, you'll have 85% participation. Everyone just realizes it's a lot easier. It saves time and money on both ends. When you sign up for this, you can also agree to get notice by email. So all that paper you get in the mail is now going to be, emailed to you if that's what you choose. So it saves the association from having to mail out all those documents to those people that are going to vote electronically. One of the things our service provides, speaking about getting things electronically, is when you go to vote, whether you're voting on the election of directors or on a question like amending your documents, the person's biography that they turned in that was mailed out with the ballots is going to be in the system that you can click on and read it and refresh your memory that, oh, that's that person, not this person. Or if you're being asked to vote on amendments, the amendments will be there as a link you can click on and read them again as you vote. So it just saves a lot of paper. Again, if you choose to get your notices electronically. So I think you'll see that there's some efficiencies that are created both on the association side and then just owners getting less paper in the mail from the association. I have a number of clients that do this. Here in Southwest Florida, the firm has had multiple hundred of these elections through our system. They are, like everything, there's hiccups at times, and I can't say that every one of those votes has gone off 100% perfectly. The last one I attended was here in Fort Myers, was a condominium association with about 800 units total, and they had about 70% participate by the electronic voting, and it makes that process a lot more efficient because those numbers just appear in a spreadsheet on your laptop, and then you count the remaining, 25 or 30 paper ballots, and you add them together, and it tells you how the vote goes. So I've found that a lot of associations, once they go through the process once or twice and understand, how it mechanically works, find it, very positive. But at the end of the day, I think the board has to make the decision on whether, that's a good fit for your community. If they do, there are the controls in place, and we would work with the board in putting out the resolution and having the board properly authorize that voting. And if they choose not to, we'll handle your vote like we've handled it the last 3 or 4 years. So that's kind of my overview. Don?
How do you collate the two voting types together when you're at the evening of the election,
Sure.
when you're getting the
Right.
results?
So at the time of the election, one thing to understand is the election of directors is done a little bit differently than all other votes, because with regards to the election of directors, those votes cannot be opened until the meeting. So the association doesn't get any information about how that vote is done until the meeting, when that information is then released by the software. And it comes to the association in a spreadsheet. And what it does is it shows you all the electronic votes you received, and then you take that to another spreadsheet where you add in the in-paper votes, and then it tells you what the total is. So you track it all in the system, and you tell them, these are the votes that were cast in person or by paper. The system automatically autofills the votes that were done online, and then you get the total. So you get one document at the end that has all the votes, one tally sheet. And then obviously, like everything else, we keep keep all of the records that were, received.
So that you would input the addresses of those who've submitted a paper ballot the night of the election into the system?
No, we wouldn't. We would just submit the totals. So you would keep all of your regular checklists, like we do when the check-in tables that say, did you vote already? Are you voting here? All that would be kept just in paper, but then the totals would be what you would enter into the system to tell you what the results are.
Yeah, what's confusing to me is how we know those that voted online by address, I
Right.
assume, and then these that are turning in paper ballots.
Well, yeah, we would have that information so you can confirm, and the online voting can be turned off before the meeting. So we would say the cutoff for online voting is 5 p.m. on Monday, the meeting's 5 p.m. on Tuesday. We get the list of everyone who's voted. We don't know how they voted, but we
No.
just know they voted.
Right, by address, and
Right.
you add these to it, and
Exactly.
they're checked off too.
Right.
Okay, I understand
Right.
that. Thank you.
If the association was going to go with electronic voting and go with your company, approximately what would the cost be?
The cost of just the system, so this is not legal services in contemplation of the vote and whatever else we do, but just the system itself, the current pricing is $375 an event. So if you had an election of directors and another vote on amending your documents, that's just a total of $375. Again, I haven't been told that the pricing is or isn't changing with the upgrades, but that's the current number as of today. Yes, sir.
What are we currently paying in your time for the time that it takes to sit there and physically count all the paper ballots in our current system?
More than $375.
Okay.
I mean,
Thank you.
yeah. You'll probably save that in paper alone. That's setting aside, the time that you spend, at the meeting. I think you'd probably save it in postage and paper.
I remember with the voting, last time we talked about having, I'm sorry. Thank you. I knew he was sitting next to me for a good reason. By telephone conference, we talked about having all of the ballots sent to your office.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was assumed with the number of man-hours involved, this was going to cost several $1,000s, which is why the association, the board decided not to spend several $1,000s doing it that way. But this $375 seems like a reasonable price, and also it could be very efficient after everybody got used to using it.
Sure. Yeah, I think the key is setting that up as a process with the long view, because there will be growing pains to set it all up and get it initially going. You know, obtaining all the email addresses, creating the master spreadsheet of email addresses, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I think once you have it going, it's kind of a perpetuating process. You know, people are accustomed to providing you their email addresses. You get them when they come in. You get them to sign up when they are new members, et cetera. And then the board, the association staff, and the members learn to use the program, whatever program it is, to vote. So I think you will see that. Yes, sir.
Rob, would it be safe to say that with that cost of $375, and I'm a big proponent of having the ballots mailed to you and getting them off-site, if we did it that way and had the electronic voting, would it be safe to say that it would still cost less than we currently pay for the system we have now?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what you pay now. I mean, I think you'll save money on postage if, you know, look, if I'm at the meeting and it goes an hour shorter, it's $350 right there. You know, the issue with having my office obtain the ballots is there were a number of concerns I raised, and if the board elects to do it, we would do it. One is, are you going to still allow members to drop off their ballots in person here? And now you have ballots being received in two places, and I'm not sure what benefit you get out of that. If you're not going to allow them to drop it off here, I think that is in and of itself a potential problem. But then if my office is receiving them, we have to verify that that ballot is from an owner at an address in Sandoval, and that just is going to take time, depending on what person is doing that verification would ultimately determine what the cost of that would be. So, but if, you know, that was the process put in place, but 80% of your votes were cast online, you're talking about a much smaller universe of paper to deal with, regardless of who's dealing with it.
Rob, the rollout process, knowing that we have 1425 resident doors here, and that is an in-person registration, am I correct?
We can set that up a number of ways. We can do it in person, requiring them to come in. There's a form that we use that we would send out with the notice that would have to be returned by the member that includes their information, their email address that they're using that is then subsequently verified. But we can put additional controls on that they have to return that in person if we wanted to do it that way, and they're checked off on the list, you know, verifying that they're the owner. We can ultimately set that process up to be customized to the association, you know, to resolve whatever concerns you have.
How long of a process do you feel, how long will it take for us to get if we do this, to roll it out completely, so that, knowing we have a lot of snowbirds that come in?
Well, I think given your seasonal residency and number of people, I would advise you to give yourself, you know, 2 or 3 months to try to get everything in place so you're not rushing before an election. So assuming that there's no member vote between now and the next annual meeting, I think it would make practical sense, given that you have to do a 14-day mailing to authorize the process anyway, you know, to look at some date in the fall to kick it off, and then spend that time getting all of the consents and email addresses from the owners that want to use it.
In your other associations, undoubtedly you have some with the approximate size that we are. How have you found that they have achieved the goals successfully? Have they done it through mailings, or has it been a combination of mailings and actual appearance at the office?
They've done a number of things. You know, you have to mail everything to everybody when the statute is going to put that on you. The associations that have been most successful, in addition to mailing everything out, they have the materials available in the office. They've done town halls where, you know, we can come and do an exhibition if you want us to do that. Again, that would have to be after September. And they've, you know, provided information in a number of ways, and they've seen that growth of participation from the first round to the subsequent rounds is where you really see, you know, the highest levels of participation.
Any more questions?
Are you taking them from the audience?
Are we taking questions?
Is there any downside to this thing, or what about the issue of hacking, that kind of thing, and
Well,
any other downside?
As I said before, the system we use has encryption that's similar to what internet banking used. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, if Vladimir Putin sticks his St. Petersburg troll farm on you, he's going to break the system. It's just going to happen. Short of that, I think there's probably a higher level of fraud potential in either people acquiring other people's emails in some nefarious way, or the paper system being misused, whether it's people submitting ballots for other owners, changing ballots when they get them and turn them in for other people, whatever, getting lost in the mail. I think the association has done a very good job of putting controls in place to prevent duplicate voting. Similar controls electronically exist, but sure, I mean, it's a human-made system, and no human-made system is infallible. I think that, the security protocols and the encryption protocols that are pervasive in the industry now, which piggyback off of the financial institution encryption, is, I think is reasonably as secure as you can expect to be. I have never heard of anyone having that type of problem with this type of voting, whether it's with our system or any other system. I would also state, while I'm not an expert in this area, I can only imagine the number of felonies that would be involved to successfully do that. So, is it possible? Absolutely. Is it likely? In my opinion, no. But who knows? No. Yes, sir.
I was curious if the 375, you stated that was per balloting.
Per meeting, basically.
Okay, if we're in forming many committees, and I can see where some opinion balloting would be quite useful to us. Can that be worked out? Is there a different charge because there's no legal opinion?
Well, the 375 is the cost to have the system set up to, hold a vote. That's not, a legal opinion being provided. If you're taking votes that are not statutorily mandated or required by your documents, opinion polls, I think you could do that with internal mechanisms that are less secure. I'll give you some free legal advice. I am anti-opinion polls because they create expectations. If you want to vote on something, vote on it. But, asking members to state their opinion in a non-binding manner, I think creates expectation problems when the board determines that the best interest of the association may be something differently. But if the board wants to, authorize those types of votes, we could, explore how you would do that if doing it through the electronic voting system is not, feasible.
All right, any other questions?
Gentleman
Please
in the
come
back.
to the microphone so that we can hear for the folks that are listening online.
Good evening. So, in the situations where you've had electronic voting, you said that the rate of use of electronic voting increases, but what about the participation rate? That is,
That's
are more people voting
right.
because they can do
I think generally yes, but participation is a very community-specific issue. Apathy versus those that participate. I do think you see increased. I would expect to see a marginal increase in the level of participation. I would say that Sandoval experiences a pretty healthy rate of participation compared to a lot of other clients, so that might not be a huge jump. But I would expect that you would see some marginal increase. I'd be a little surprised if you didn't see an increase of some rate.
Thanks, and thanks for your presentation.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Kathy?
Kathy. They're trying to put you out of a job.
I know. I'm going to take it off, since I'm short. Over and above the 350, what would that be? I mean, I know it's subjective, I guess.
No,
but-
the 375, the cost, the fee for BP ballot to set up and hold a vote is a fixed fee at 375. So that would be the cost of doing electronic voting through our system. That obviously does not include any time that I have with respect to the legal work that we do for the association, whether it's attending the meeting, providing opinion, drafting amendments, et cetera. But the cost of the service to do the electronic vote, that's just a per meeting charge.
Okay, so if you were at the meeting for 3 or 4 hours, that's still,
That's still at my
Yeah.
hourly rate.
yeah,
And hopefully, we're there for less time.
yeah. Now, the other question I have is for people who still want a paper vote. You
Absolutely.
would still have to come in here.
Yes.
You have to have a system set up.
Yes.
What happens to those votes? Are they still put in a lockbox?
Yeah,
Are they sent to you? Do
Well,
you
that would
open
be,
them?
that would be ultimately determined by the board on how we do that. But essentially, none of that has to change. You know, owners still have the right to vote in paper, vote by proxy, and you could still have the exact same process that you have now for those owners that want to vote that way. And this is just another option. So when you come to the meeting, there would still be some number of paper ballots that the volunteers would have to, you know, verify and count and collate, and then you'd have the numbers from the online system that we'd have to
And
put
then how
together.
do you put the two together? Because,
Well, we would still have a list that we're checking off of those owners that are turning it in paper. And then you get a list of those owners that have voted electronically, and we can verify that there's not any duplicate votes.
and is that done the night of the voting?
That can be done as we go. We won't get tallies on how the vote goes, but you would know who has voted, so you can verify that you're not getting a second, you know, ballot, and still have the master checklist like we've always had. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Back to what Doug Willett said before. I mean, Rob, you referred to Putin and his elections. That's a little bit different than this mom and pop election that we're talking about. Can you definitely guarantee us that
No,
your system?
no. I cannot guarantee it cannot be hacked. No one can. Is it likely? In my experience, no. I mean, but if you use, you know, again, the analogy I use, because this is the encryption that is used, is internet and online banking. You know, the type of encryption that electronic and automatic funds transfer uses to protect it is the same type of encryption that our service uses. Most services in the industry use similar encryption.
I believe a lot of residents had that as an issue with them, so that answers the question.
Yes, sir.
How does the system you have account for residents that may have registered but moved since the election day?
Well, that is going to be the same way, we would account for that the same way we account for paper ballots that are cast by owners that are not owners on the date of the election. It has to be verified that the owner list is up to date as of the date of the election, and any improper votes would have to be discarded.
So the system will be accurate to the day of the voting?
Right.
For owners that live?
Yes.
In the community on the day of the vote?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Which is the same as, and to be clear, accurate as of the records of the property appraiser, which is what is used now.
I don't think you can expect anything better than that, right? Okay.
Sir?
Would you say that electronic voting is any less secure than paper ballot voting?
No, I mean, I think it's reasonable to argue it's more secure because the process is controlled from start to finish, and there is not a period where, you know, the ballots are, you know, out in the ether. I mean, under best case scenario, they mail them to an owner, the owner fills them out and drops them off, but some ballots arrive in other ways. And I have no facts or knowledge that anyone has acted untoward with respect to ballots that have been turned in. but I think electronic voting has an extra level of security.
Are there any other
All right.
questions? Then let's thank Rob for the
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
And the board will take this under consideration, and I would just offer my suggestion of maybe an ad hoc committee of board members to determine how this would work and make a recommendation. So we'll get to that at another time. They're all shying away from me. You notice that? Working too hard. Okay, we want to move on. There are no resident topics sign-ups, so we will move on. If there are any at the end of the meeting, we can address them at that time. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the past meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes or corrections? And if not, then I entertain a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay. And the next item is the,
All in favor?
I don't think you have to vote,
Oh, sorry.
is the president's report. I'm going to stick to my 3-minute pledge, and I want to talk to you this time about some items that I'll expound upon right here. Our community demographics have certainly changed over the last month. Our northern friends have migrated back to the north to reunite with their families, and we want to wish them all well and look forward to their return. I have 3 issues that I would like to discuss: Phase 3 roads, communications, and community dynamics. Our many projects are still underway, and all of us would like to see immediate action, but we know true process and progress takes a slow path. Last Monday, I rode with Taylor Morrison Representative Keith Norton. Avalon Engineering has completed their inspection of the Phase 3 road system and given their stamp of approval. Taylor Morrison has initiated the bid process to place the final layer of asphalt. They're getting closer, but no firm date has been given to complete the project. After this work is done, I would expect to see a process begin for the final closeout inspections. Your board will carefully monitor this progress, and we would like to solicit your feedback as we determine what needs to be improved or things to be considered. Our communications committee is in need of additional volunteers who can help Vic Netchfeld in his video subcommittee efforts. This is not a one-person job. And if we truly want to be state-of-the-art, we need a team, not an individual. Anyone who has interest, please volunteer. Contact Vic, Doug, myself, and we'll give you more information. Training is available. It's never too late to learn something new. Last weekend, my 10-year-old grandson asked me about ad hominem attacks. Anybody know what that means? Okay. This occurs when someone attacks the person making a point instead of the point itself. This becomes pervasive when a discussion digresses to discredit one's character instead of focusing on the issues at hand. We all have flaws, but our points of view are still valid. Ad hominem occurs when someone accuses opponent of having bad motives. Here in Sandoval, I truly do not believe anyone has bad motives. We are collectively, as a community, need to make firm commitment to stay focused on the issues and not levy personal attacks regarding the process. Your board is firmly committed to respecting others and fulfilling this obligation. And I challenge everyone to make a conscious effort to do the same. Together, we can hold our heads high and be proud of living in one of the most sought-after communities in Cape Coral. So ad hominem. If you think you're guilty, then I'd like you to try to improve. Thank you. The next item is the treasurer. And I've given him a little leeway that he doesn't have to stick to the 3-minute or 5-minute time limit because it's an important topic.
Okay, well, I apologize in advance because I tried reading it and getting it in 3 or 4 minutes, and if I do that, you can't understand what I say. April 30 financial highlights. Did everyone get a copy in the audience?
Yes.
Okay, so they can all see it. Per Jeff Moore, the Pope Director of Accounting, there are 2 items of note on those financials. the Honk invoice for $51,775, and the Bose Electric invoice for $55,763 have been reclassified from account number 8010 Capital Improvements to reflect the payment from the CenturyLink telecommunication surplus account. And secondly, account number 5715 Security Services reflects a credit balance of $4,531.50. This is because a couple of checks were lost in the mail. They voided those checks, reissued them, and they took place in different periods, time periods. So the voiding of the check created the credit, and in the next month's financials, the replacement check will zero that out, and then the next month's bill will be in that. So the fact that it's a credit, don't worry about it, it's voided checks. Our 2019 budget is based on revenues we expect to collect from homeowners. Any budget adjustments for expenses will be the shifting of dollars from one line item to another, as no additional revenues can be expected unless we utilize the telecommunications surplus fund to fund current obligations. Several items currently in excess of 33% of the annual budget are as follows, and we are 33% through the year. So if we were on budget, they would be at 33% or below, unless there's some reason why, a timing that we had to pay something that's going to carry on through the rest of the year. But account number 4140, income from resales, is currently at $123,000. It shows a zero budget. It's my understanding that this board approved a budget of $300,000, which was $3,000 per unit for 100 units that we expect to resale over the year. And that's, the fact that it's showing zero just means that's not in our financial statements. I think we should put that number in our financial statements. Account number 5300, bank charges, is at $6,720 and has a budget for the year of $2,000. Account number 5330, office expense, is at $17,775 and it has an annual budget of $30,000, so it's over 50%. Account number 5625, tree trimming, is at $17,540 with an annual budget of $15,000. Account number 5830, pool supplies, is at $17,398 with an annual budget for the full year of $15,000. Account number 5900, repairs and maintenance, is at $30,741.36, and it has an annual budget of $40,000. And account number 6705, telephones, is currently at $8,744.26, and it has an annual budget of $5,000. If we allow these expenditures to continue unabated, we'll end the year in those line items with $296,754 in expenditures, with a budget of $107,000, or a loss of $189,754. We need to reforecast our budget to reflect coverage of these shortfalls sooner rather than later. And I would reiterate to everyone that this is not a case of the current general manager going out and spending like a drunken sailor, just everything in sight. It's a case of we had a faulty budget to begin with. We didn't have the numbers in our budget to fund our association adequately and provide the services that we expect to be provided to us. So the only options are to come up with more revenues or to cut services. And that's what this board needs to do, is to determine what we're going to do. Our audit recommendation, one of the audit recommendations was to examine our cash balances and take steps to protect ourselves from uninsured deposits. The Finance Committee is beginning to look at this. We'll discuss the current system, the current investment policy, investments, and current investments to make recommendations to the board to stay the course, to consider a formal RFP to solicit additional firms, services, or costs if appropriate. In this, Jerry Evans and I need to take a meeting with our investment advisor from Bank of Omaha, number one, to replace existing signature cards which have former employees and board members as authorized signers. Number two, review the methodology used to establish the current investment policy, and as a result, the current assets in our portfolio. And number three, issue orders to replace cash in the account from recently matured CDs with new investments consistent with the investment policy. We currently have uninsured cash as the matured CDs have paid into a single account, which is in excess of $250,000 right now. So we need to get that money reinvested so it gets back under insurance. Worth noting, there have been statements in the community about Sandoval having invested in the nation of China. Sandoval has no investments in China. We have a CD with a U.S. chartered and FDIC insured bank named Cathay Bank. That bank was founded 57 years ago in Los Angeles, California. Ownership of that bank is listed in the NASDAQ with the CATY as its symbol, and our CD has the same FDIC insurance as CDs from Bank of America or Wells Fargo. So the discussion about investments in China is totally off base, and we need to let that rest. The board resolved to authorize Jerry Evans, Jeff Moore, and I to be the authorized contacts with BB&T Bank, RE, the account known as the Cube account. This still needs to be done. And just so everybody knows what that is, if you come in here and use a credit card to buy a sticker or whatever, it goes through the Cube, it goes through PayPal or some intermediary, and then it gets downloaded into our bank. That, a former board, instead of using Pope to set up the account to do that, somebody went down to a local BB&T branch, set up the account, has money going into that account. So like I said last time, money goes in but nothing comes out. We need to rectify that. Formatting of monthly financial statements. In the board pack, you've got a mock-up of our financial statements. I'm suggesting that we authorize Jeff Moore to add a column titled Telecommunications Surplus Fund to enhance readability. In essence, what this is the balance sheet currently shows, and I'm not looking at it right now, but it shows operating, reserves, and total. And to look at what we have in the telecommunications surplus, you have to look at several accounts in there and add them up and do the numbers and come up with a number. What I'm saying is we should have a column, and that telecommunications surplus would be in that column all by itself, just like reserves. So you'd see how much money we have in it, whether it's invested, whether it's in cash, what the fund balance is, how much money we have in that account, and any current expenditures where we're taking money out of that account to go toward other purposes. So I think that would increase the readability both to the board and to the community, and I'm suggesting that we make that change, and you do have an example of it in your pack, I believe. As stated previously, automation of accounts payable processing to expedite timely payments of the association invoices by Pope Properties will be available sometime in the next 6 months or so. They're in the process of determining what software to use. Once that determination is made, there'll be an implementation period, but 6 to 8 months, something like that, it should be getting close. I'm recommending, let's see, where to go. The accounts payable process has been modified with the input from the Finance Committee. I am tonight recommending one change to that process and one reversion to a piece of the previous process. The revision is, I'm suggesting that recurring charges, things that we have every month, utilities, credit card payments, should be set up for auto pay. That's where we've been getting interest charges, late charges, having to put deposits in place because we're paying late. This would take care of that. The payment will be done appropriately and on time. We would still approve it, check it, go through it just like we're doing right now, but it would be after the fact. And if we turned out that LCEC billed us a wrong amount, we'd work with LCEC to issue a credit or an additional charge, depending on which way it was, to fix it in the next billing period, but we wouldn't be in a case of we're getting hit with late charges because we're arguing about whether it's right or not and we haven't paid it, and they say it's late, pay the extra charges. I'm currently unaware of any instances where payments have been adjusted prior to issuing checks under our present system. Are you aware of any of those? Okay, so I don't think it's going to be an issue, and I would recommend that we do that to save ourselves some money. Reversion issue, the Finance Committee recommended in the new process that no volunteer should be involved in the accounts payable process. As a result, board supervision and approval of invoices has stopped. I do not believe the Finance Committee's intent was to totally eliminate oversight, Therefore, I'm recommended that the board oversight and approvals be reinstated to confirm invoices have been approved by management and that they are coded to the general ledger accounts and have budgetary funds available to pay them. Under this situation, if we got to 100% of an annual budget and we needed to pay a bill, it's not that we wouldn't pay it because we've already incurred it. We'd go ahead and pay it, but we'd make sure that we brought it before the board, that we're at 102% of the budget for this line item, and we got 3 months to go. We need to move some money from somewhere else into this so that we can finish out the year. And that's what the board supervision and oversight would be checking. It wouldn't be checking, did we get 50 pool chairs and go out and show me the 50 chairs that we got. It's just that it's done appropriately. Construction and process account schedule is available. The construction and process account is available, and the board, with the ad hoc committee, need to review the payments, look at the work produced, and determine if there's any additional unpaid liabilities associated with the clubhouse expansion project, and if any plans, drawings, that have been produced have any value going forward. The Finance Committee has begun to examine these payments from all vendors so that we can assist the ad hoc committee in this process and just give them the information and they can decide on that. The board has authorized and requested a total accounting of the CenturyLink surplus fund to include all contributions that should have been made compared to amounts actually contributed, as well as any distributions from the fund from inception to current. This item is on the Finance Committee schedule, and I do have a hard copy of the raw data of that schedule if the board members would like to see that, but it doesn't have all of any distributions, where they went, why they went. That's still a work in process. And I'd like to thank the Finance Committee for taking all this on, because it's pretty detailed and intricate, and it's going to involve getting Jeff Moore from Pope to get us some information on some things too. So, but that's it. A little more than 3 minutes. I apologize for that.
I do have a comment, if
Okay.
you will. So on the overages, if we go over a line item 102%, you're suggesting go to the board. I think that's an idea. What my thought process would be is to create a reforecast of the budget so we can find out where we expect to be at the end of the year, and then have the board approve that and say at the end of the year we're $80,000 over, and once that's been solidified, whether it comes from CL account or wherever, and then we use that as the guide whether to go over, so we're not coming every single board meeting with 20 or 30
Well,
nickel and dimes.
there could be items on your list that, GL items that are under as well as over.
That will be shown in the reforecast.
This will balance
Right.
that out.
It'll even it out.
Yeah.
Correct.
And it may well be that
Maybe.
we don't have the ability to finish the year with the current numbers. So this board may have to come up with how we're going to fund the
Yeah.
rest of the year at our current service level.
And quite honestly, to Don's point, we do have areas we're saving for as well, but this reforecast will give us our position, and the board will be able to make a decision.
I agree with that.
And Bill, is it fair to say that some GL items like tree trimming, 115%, tree and sod replacement, 50% of the budget, repairs and maintenance, 45% was spent by the time this board sat?
It's primarily, it's current obligations that we have incurred, and it's unknown contingent liabilities which existed at 12/31, which neither we nor our auditor knew about, and we're having to pay now out of, they were 2018 expenses, like the lightning warning system. That was $8,000. We're having to write a check for that out of our 2019 budget. It was installed and incurred in 2018 and should have been addressed in the 2018 budget, but we have to take care of it now, and there's several items like that.
And to be fair, I think it's a combination of that
Yes.
plus a budget that
A
is
low number to
more than
begin with.
challenging, right?
Well, I think it would be important that, we know what the carryovers were, so that we know how well we're doing with the budget for 2019, and it's not fair to penalize our planning process, even though we have the obligation.
We will have that detailed in the, when I submit the reforecast, that will be detailed, the 2018 expenses that we paid in 2019,
Okay.
that amount.
I think that what's worrying me is, you know, you put it in bold print here, and every time it seems like past board, you know, maybe not necessarily the current board, it's not finger pointing, but obviously the numbers don't lie. It's that when there is a possible overage or whatever, we're going to that CL account like it's, you know, like it's an Easter basket full of eggs, and we keep going to that, and that somebody's going to keep laying eggs in that account. And I think we're using that account as a.
I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that we have used that account in the past. If that's an accurate statement from my point of view, then I will stand corrected. But I've been assured that nothing had come out of that CenturyLink account to pay for anything other than the Envira, and the aeration hasn't come out of it yet. So in the past, the Envira $96,000 annual fee has come out of that. The installation of the equipment came out of the reserve operating funds, but I have been assured nothing else has come out of that.
No, I'm saying
Well,
it's intimated that we can go to the CL account for any shortcomings. And if we want to build a building that the CL account was supposed to be paid for, we need to stop.
Yeah, well, I
stop.
agree with that.
That's my point.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Is
Don-
that stop going to the well, because money keeps accruing in there, and we're using it because obviously at some point in time, the finance committee or yourself noticed that somebody before Jerry's tenure was, as you, spending like drunken sailors, where we're over budget here, and why. So again, we have to, whether we reforecast the budget or not, obviously somebody authorized overspending of budget line items, and now we're having to reforecast our budget because we are potentially short $189,000.
Don, if you look at this schedule, the CenturyLink Fund started in April of 2016. In May of 2016, we had a $2,300 current month adjustment where we moved money out of it. In June, we had a $2,000 adjustment. In July, we had a $4,000 adjustment. And that was money being used to balance the budget. That's what Jeff told me.
So it would be important that we get that CenturyLink separated from the other accounts so everybody understands what's
Yes.
going on here.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
And also, you've got the case of at this last year end, we moved $122,000 out of the CenturyLink to fund the construction in process.
Okay.
We ended up the year at $40,000 over budget. We were 160-something thousand over budget until they moved that 122 to the balance sheet and took it out of CenturyLink. This has been an ongoing problem that has not been publicized, so we do need to
Okay.
address that.
Oh, I'm fully in favor of that.
Last thing I'll say is, you mentioned the CL account, you were looking for board approval. It doesn't require board approval, but it's welcome if you would like to have a motion for that. It's up to you.
I think that's an accounting thing. I don't see
I
why
agree.
that's
For
necessary.
the
Separation?
scheduling of, for the formatting. That's, the finance committee did recommend that. They came up with the original mock-up of it. Jeff refined it, and there's some more refining that needs to be done, but it will help us read the
Well,
financials.
that shows me
and
that's the job of a good treasurer, so.
And I so move, and that's, the finance committee really actually thought that we'd already implemented, and I said, no, that's a board decision, not a finance committee decision.
Well, do we need a motion? Do we want?
Let's go ahead and make a
So
motion.
moved.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor of having separation of the CenturyLink monies from the operating costs for accounting purposes?
Into a separate fund on the financial
Yeah,
statements.
on the statements. Okay, all in favor?
Bill moved, and Marilyn
Yeah,
second.
yeah. All in
got it.
favor, raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, that's approved. In May, we'll look forward to seeing how it looks laid out on the new format. Okay, and then next thing on our agenda is the general manager's report.
So I have a few things to report on. First of all, deed restriction enforcement, and it's moving a little slow only because of the volume. I'm probably around the 400, 450 number right now as far as the amount of violations that we issued. Not making excuses, I was off for a week before last, and just this week catching up from that time off. So I expect to get back in the mode next week, and I'm probably about coming from Veterans Gate up is where I'm heading right now. I'm probably 2/3 to 3/4 of the way up, And so I think that next week I'll be able to finish all the way to the clubhouse, and then I'll be going towards phase 3 that following week. And then again, for those of you who might not have, I don't think it's been published yet, I did a video a few days ago with the Communications Committee on deed restriction enforcement, and Doug Willett, the Communications Committee chairperson, Q&A'd me. It's about a 20 or 25-minute video. It's very informative. So I think that's going out next week. Is that correct? Monday or Tuesday. Thank you. So in that video, you'll see that I expect this. You know, we can call it a cleanup phase or whatever term we use, but to get things back to normal, to where then we start on a more of a normal routine of twice monthly inspections. We're probably looking at about 3-4 months on the outside, and then I think it'll kind of settle down and get to a normal routine after that. Next thing I wanted to talk about was we had a question about streamlining community maintenance issues, and I think that there's a lot of issues out there that homeowners know about. We like to use you guys as eyes and ears as well, and so we are looking at putting together either a work order system that I haven't informed the board about yet. I am looking into that, or at the very least, a little bit less expensive item, a little bit less efficient would be a dedicated email address to community issues that you guys can feel that you're sending to that gets separated from the normal business. It helps us in the office be a little bit more efficient with getting back to you, as well as our productivity on the repairs, et cetera. So that's being thought of. The pool water features, if for those of you who go to the pool, it was before my time here, but I know there was some repairs done and some painting done. For those of you who might have noticed, and I think it's been brought up in board meetings since I've been here, is that we're having a warranty issue with the paint chipping. In order to repair that, they're going to need to drain the pool to a certain level. So what I made a decision to wait. Obviously, summer is here, and we're going to wait until August the 12th, which is the first week the kids are out of school to do that project. Back in school, sorry.
And it's not going to drain the whole pool. Yep. We just have to drain it enough to get these fixtures out of the water.
Next item on my list is, I think everybody really that comes to the clubhouse knows that we've had the bathrooms closed for a few days for repairs. Those repairs have been completed, and I think today they finished the painting, and then tomorrow it should be cleaned up. So I think we even had some people in there using facilities, which is fine at this point. They're open, but I think a little bit of a cleanup because we were still painting today. The crew's going to come in tonight and make it a little bit more presentable. So tomorrow we should be 100%. Another item that's been on the board meeting topics conversation: golf carts and electric vehicles. And we were going to bring a recommendation to the board to consider. However, the Communication Committee is working really hard and quickly on formulating surveys to go out to the community. I think that Doug might speak on a little bit on that a little bit later. So what we've decided to do is use a survey as a vehicle to find out basically what the community wants before we formulate that recommendation and vote on it. I think that obviously if you come to a board meeting, I think you can get a sense of what people want in here, but we also recognize there's 100 people sitting in this room where there's 2,000 or 3,000 people out there. So I think it's a highly controversial topic, everywhere from, you know, a 7 or 8 year old driving a little electric scooter in their front driveway versus the kids and other people driving right down the boulevards, right? So I think that the board is interested in having some better data before they make that decision, and I think that's coming soon. And again, Doug might speak to that. Another item that's been hanging out there is towing, and I don't want you guys to think that it's just a lack of wanting to contract. Somerville lost their contract with their last tow truck operator, and they, effective of 2 days ago, just contracted with a new company called Roman Towing. The problem has been it's hard to find a towing contractor. And I don't know all this business, but I can tell you enough to where you'll understand. Basically, that there is a city or a requirement that makes the tow truck drivers, when they come out, wait for a police officer before they tow off of a gated community. And so the reluctance has been these tow truck companies come out here and they can only charge up to a certain level per city ordinance. I think that's like 165, say, something around there. So, but basically, they very quickly crunch the numbers and they're losing money. And so that has been the consistent problem in trying to find someone to tow in the community. Second to that is GL, general liability limits. I've always required $1 million as a minimum for a tow truck operator, and Roman does not have $1 million. So I reached back out to our insurance broker, and he checked with the carriers, and the consensus was that they agree with $1 million, but they could go as low as 500,000. So 2 days ago, when Somerville let me know they contracted with Roman, I called Roman yesterday and asked them on their limits. It's 300,000, and so I asked him. I said, you know, even if it costs an extra $100 or whatever to raise your limits to 500,000, surely with 1,400 homes, you're going to make that up. And he responded to me. He's confident in that, and he wants to be our contractor, our provider, but he just doesn't know if his insurance company is going to allow him to go to that 500,000 for any amount. So we obviously have a list of tow truck companies that we're still calling and talking to, but I just wanted to let everybody know that it's not as easy as just calling a tow company and contracting with them, that there are those issues. Process, this is another question that came in from a homeowner that we felt was more of a community-wide thing, and some people were concerned about the process of deactivation of vehicle access tags and how that happens. And basically, when a new owner or lessee comes in and talks to Carol to get that access, she immediately goes to the current file and deactivates all of those, and then the new one gets on top of it. So there's no duplicates. You can't move out and have someone else move in the same home and have both people still have the activations. It's pretty secure. And then I only have 2 other things, and I want to go ahead and take the opportunity now. Just really from Jim Swigert. He's not here tonight, and I told him that I would talk about this. Storm drains in phase 3. We're in conversations with Taylor Morrison. There's still some that have the cloth or the sandbags that's creating problems. We're also talking to them about doing a clean out just because of all the construction material that's in the storm drain. So that is being actively worked on. And then Jim also wanted me to mention that the stormwater inspections that we do every year have been approved. And in fact, I've paid for it, and I'm in the process right now. I've already billed back a couple of entities. Basically, we pay for it up front, and a lot of our commercial neighbors will pay us their share back. And we all get a significantly reduced fee by handling it that way. And that's all I had for my update. Mark Boyer is out ill tonight, so he will not be reporting on projects.
All right, thank you, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
Oh, I did want to add one more thing, please. I had it on my list as a write-in, very important. So I wanted to mention a certain staff member that has gone up and beyond since I've been here. I think everybody knows, obviously I'm new, not only to Sandoval, but to the community. Mark is new. Libby's new in her position. Linda, the reception is fairly new. And I cannot tell you enough good things about Carol Essig and what she's meant to the operations. And I just literally could not do my job without her. If something ever happened to her, we would be in dire straits. So for whatever it's worth, if you guys see her, thank her. She really works hard, and she's very good at her job and very much appreciated internally in the office. So thank you, Carol.
Well, I think as a community, we need to give her a thank you. Well, thank you, Jerry. Let's move on to committee reports, and we have 3 to 5 minutes.
3 to 5, please.
And we're going to set a timer. And if you're not done, you have to sit down. Okay, amenities.
I have nothing to report.
You're in good shape. Thank you very much. ARC committee.
I think that's cheating. Mine will be short. 3 minutes? I asked for his. No, I don't want his 3 minutes. The dates covered by this report are from April 25th to May 16th.
Our committee has been meeting weekly to review the applications and conduct inspections of the completed projects. Additionally, we've been meeting with landscaping and communication committee representatives to coordinate projects that'll tie together across those committees. Several of these projects have been in progress with previous ARC committees, and we will continue with them and address new issues. I'd like to thank the previous ARC members for their hard work, and also thank Gail Ton for helping transition to the new committee. During the time period from April 25th to May 16th, we did 16 inspections. We reviewed and approved 14 applications. People are getting better at doing the applications. It's going through a little smoother. We had 6 applications that required additional information, received 5, and those 5 were approved, and we had no denials. And that's my report.
Thank you.
I think all of our volunteers need a round of applause. Thank you.
The time spent on all these projects is just really significant, and you can't, a thank you is not the answer, but we really acknowledge what you do. Doug? Now, this report is divided into 2 sections. Doug has his 3 minutes, but we have something else in addition to it.
Okay. Well, I'd like to begin with by remarking about the sound system in here tonight. I think I've been coming to these meetings for 3 or 4 years, and this is by far the best sound that we've had. So I think Vic gets a round of applause. I'm going to begin with a question for the audience. How many of you feel that the board and the general manager have improved their communications with residents since the last election, and that they are making a sincere effort to keep you up to date and informed on the things that are important to you? Can I see a show of hands? Okay. Could I get a round of applause for the board for doing that? Thank you. That completes my report.
35 seconds.
That's how I had it all structured. I was going to make a dramatic sit down and look at Wells and say I showed you. And then he turns around and sticks me with a couple of other obligations. So let me move into the second part of my non-report. This is a non-report. I already did the report. The Communications Committee is involved in a number of things, as I've mentioned before, and 2 of them are on the agenda tonight. One is the social media policy. We have for a long time wished to get more involved in social media. The last board decided that that was inappropriate, and they didn't want the association to do so. The new board is more open to our appeal to do some of that, and I think we have put together some safeguards that answer some of the issues and some of the objections to us being involved, the HOA being involved in social media. So we are working, we are asking tonight, and it's on the agenda later in the meeting, for the board to approve a new version of the board communication policy that inserts the ability for the communications committee and the board itself to sponsor social media features. And so our plans, and you'll hear more about this in the coming weeks, but our plans are to start a Facebook page for the HOA, an official Facebook page that would include information on our lifestyles and all kinds of things, but it would not have the same kind of posture with the public, with the residents, that the other Facebook pages has. And so it will supplement the other Facebook pages rather than competing with them. And so I'm looking forward to, and I hope the board will approve that, and we will move forward with not only a Facebook page, but a Twitter account, an Instagram account, and the ability to do text messaging to your iPhones. And all of this would be on a volunteer basis. You would have to opt into deciding you wanted to participate in these things. But it will allow us several other ways of communicating and getting out the information. So that's number one. Number two, we did a brief demographic survey a week or 2 ago using SurveyMonkey, and While the results were encouraging in the sense that we had over 700 participants, when we stepped back, we said we didn't do very well on this. We did not. Number one, we had the survey posted on Facebook pages with the links, and as a result, we had contaminated results. We had, for example, there were over 30 entries, all to the same address. And in addition to that, we had a number of people who claimed their email never got through to them, they never saw it, and so forth. So what it did was point out to us that we have a couple of areas we need to improve. And one of them is our email system. We need to, and we are in fact doing a lot of scrubbing of our current email system. We have a number of people who are using, and a lot of these problems are at the resident level, where the emails are incorrect, they're not getting through for some reason. We had people, for example, who were using their office email address for their resident emails, and a lot of these, if you work with a company that has over 100 employees, more than likely that's going to block personal emails like this, and so it doesn't get through. There are a lot of other issues involved, including how accurate our email system has been, and how up to date it is, and how often it's scrubbed, and so forth. So Denise over there is working very hard with Carol to do the things necessary to get that in better shape. One of the problems is that we are using an outdated software system called Club Essentials to do our emails. And one of the things that we want to propose, and I'd like to move forward with this right now, is that we switch from that email system to a new email system, state-of-the-art, which is called Constant Contact. And I'd like to introduce Rob Hunsing, who is a member of our committee and who is working on this particular issue for us, to introduce Constant Contact to the board and the community.
That's okay. You're fine.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good. My name is Rob Heising, and it's great to be here. We'll flip this up a little bit. So one of the things that I'd like to talk about today is this new tool. It's not new. It's been around for a long time and it's widely accepted, but it'll be new to us. And what I'd like to do is kind of go through some of the advantages of this new system so that you can look at it. We'll talk about what the general pricing is for the tool so you can see just how inexpensive it is. And then obviously we'd like to have board approval to move it forward as possible. So the first statement here is if your plans don't include mobile, your plans are not finished. And one of the things that we know about today is the prevalence of mobile devices. Most people have a cell phone these days, and it's usually a smartphone, and they're receiving email on it. So every one of our tools that we need to be looking at for communications these days needs to include information that's going to work on mobile platforms. In the industry, this is called mobile friendliness or mobile responsive design. And how this works is you present your information in one way out, and then what happens is based on the individual screen dimensions that a person comes to use, whether they're coming using their desktop computer, whether they're using a mobile phone that's vertically oriented or horizontally oriented, or an iPad, the information is automatically going to adjust to show that information in a way that's pleasing and optimally usable for that particular device. And that is called mobile responsive design. Now, Constant Contact has themes, and tools that we can use to design emails so that they come out in a mobile responsive way, so that it doesn't matter whether you're viewing it through a computer system or whether you're looking at it on your cell phone. It's going to look good to you and you're going to be able to read it. It won't be tiny print. You'll be able to just read it right there. One of the big things that we notice about this system and that people like is that it's self-managed subscriptions. Now, in this case, what you have is you have the ability to go in, and we can talk more about in the next slide. I'll talk about how this is done. But, you know, it is true statement these days that we say self-service is the new full service. And in this case, what people want to be able to do is they want to be able to go into a system, go into their preferences, and they want to be able to subscribe or unsubscribe to lists as they desire. And so what you'll see is that with the constant contact system, it's possible for us to create lists around certain specific topical areas. Let's say you're interested in tennis, or you're interested in bocce, or you're interested in the women's events where they're going to go out to eat. You can subscribe to those lists, and then you will receive information in your email based on those subscriptions. In this case, you can see that we have individualized preferences. Each resident has a unique, and their preferences are to them. In the current system, we can only have one email address. In this new system, we can have as many email addresses as people desire, although we would probably want to limit it to a couple per household if at all possible. But in this case, if you have a husband who has one email address and a wife that has the other, or whoever, they can subscribe to what they want, and they each get their own preferences. Another thing that we tend to say is that you can't manage what you don't track. And one of the things that we can do with a system like this, and although we do have some tracking metrics in the current system, but what this allows us to do is to look at a very granular level at who's engaging with our emails, who's opening them, who's looking at them, who's sharing them, who might be clicking on results inside. And it gives us a chance. I know it's a little creepy that we know so much in these, but the point is that we use that information to help understand what you want. And so if we notice that we're sending out an email and not many people are engaging with it and not many people are opening it, in that case, that gives us really good feedback to know, well, maybe we're not providing the right information. In the case that we see something that's very active, that's being used a lot, this also gives us great feedback. And so these metrics that we can track on a per email basis that we send out in these campaigns is very helpful to us in understanding what you want and that sort of thing. Talking about pricing, one of the things that we know is, as Doug has mentioned, we're going to try to move away from Club Essentials. I think we heard that contract is due within about 6 months, and so that contract has a line item value of about $5,000. In the process of trying to avoid that and get away from that, we really need to start implementing pieces of that Club Essentials software in other ways. And so here you can see, based on a couple of email addresses per household, we probably get by with about 2,500 in our list size, and that price would be $378 a year. And if we needed to go up higher than that, we could go up as high as 5,000 list size, and that would be $540. And there were some questions about storage, and we get about a gigabyte worth of storage in with that. So as you can see, the price is not high. That is getting a nonprofit price, and that is paying for an annual fee. So it's quite reasonably priced. I want to just quickly review some of the features and benefits of the system. We have mobile-friendly email communications. We have self-managed subscriptions, multiple email addresses per residence. We have individualized preferences per email address. We can track performance metrics and consumption. We have ease of use in terms of creating templates for welcome emails for new people. We can create a special email for when we have a video that's going out or a newsletter. And I think that Denise has already been experimenting with it, and she's liking it already, so that's great. And it's fast and easy integration. I'll tell you that in my company, when we roll this out for a physician practice, it takes us probably not more than a couple weeks to do that. In the case of here, because we're working with volunteers, obviously we probably want to put a little bit longer horizon on that, but we aren't talking about a long-term or difficult implementation. That's it for my presentation. Are there any questions? What's that?
We will in a minute.
No, Rob has a private company that supports medical practices, and he uses this product in many of those companies. I just wanted to say that in the motion that hopefully you'll consider, we are looking to get to up to the 5,000 possibility as an open end, and whether we spend all of that or not, we'll spend the appropriate amount within whatever you authorize to do the job we're trying to do.
So I have a question. Do you know what the line item, the GL line item for Club Essentials or the website is in our budget?
My understanding is there is a line item I've been seeing before that speaks to I can't think of it offhand. There is a $5,000 line item for internet services, something like that, what is it? Okay, 5315 is $5,000.
And then what are we spending on Club Essentials?
That is the Club Essential item.
Are we paying that much?
Yeah.
That's the line item.
Club Essentials is doing a couple of things for us we need to be aware of. It's hosting our website, okay, which is the biggest charge. It is also providing our email system. It is providing, it has a survey capability, and it also provides several administrative features that we don't use. This is one of, but primarily it was brought in, I believe, to host our original website and provide our email system, okay? It is an outdated system. It is not very user-friendly. It is very difficult to use. We have found it impossible to produce a newsletter out of it. And so we have a series of things we need to replace when we get rid of Club Essentials. We need an emailer, which is what Constant Contact will do for us. We need a survey system, and that either Club Essentials or we may want to look at other survey systems to get the most one.
Constant Contact does not provide that?
It does provide it, but whether it's an optimal system or not is yet to be determined. We estimate that we can do website hosting. We get another software system. We estimate at $240 a year. Constant Contact should cost us, depending on which level we subscribe to, between $378 and $546 a year. And I'm proposing that we go to we get authorization for the 546, but we choose which, if we can get away with 338, we certainly would do so. Survey, if we decide to get another survey system after analyzing Constant Contact against other survey systems, SurveyMonkey, for example, would be, if we went to that one ultimately, would be $384 a year. And then the website development, for the first year only, we need to convert from our current website to a new host. First year only, that would be a $6,000 item. So we'll come back to you with that proposal when it's appropriate. However, after that first year at $6,000, the annual maintenance would be $1,000 a year. So as of today, it's $5,000 a year. So we can invest $2,000 more this year and save $4,000 a year every year thereafter. Okay, so that's the total package. But what I'm really after tonight is getting the constant contact approved, and that'll allow us to get started. The other point I'll make, I have a project manager who is retiring and moving to Sandoval full-time in June 8th. She'll be here. And she has, this is Lee Broll. Many of you may know her. She has had a place here for quite some time. But Lee is a very experienced project manager and has done a number of software conversions for her company. And she has agreed to take on a project management role to pull this all together and keep us on track and make sure we get full value for our money. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That's a little more than I expected to get into, but I think you need the background.
Okay.
So the motion that the Communications Committee is asking for is that they be authorized to license a constant contact for a one-year term at a cost not to exceed $550.
Will we receive a savings on our $5,000, whoever it is we're with now?
No, that's going to come into the next year. I think we have a contract through the end of the year, so I think we'll see that. We might spend a little bit more next year, but then we'll see the savings every year thereafter.
Okay.
Do we have a treasurer's recommendation?
I'll move that we do that, but we're going to have to include that in our budget reforecasting.
We're only looking at 550, so I think we can.
We can move something else from that. So I move that.
Okay. With his concurrence, then I would then ask, anyone want to make that motion? Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any more discussion? All right. Are those in favor of the constant contact resolution? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
That's my 3-minute presentation.
I think it was longer than mine.
Okay. Finance Committee report. Oh, I'm sorry. I am in covenants. I stand corrected.
The Covenants Committee is not reporting tonight. They did have an initial.
Hey, there he is.
That's a nice way to get back at me for the last meeting. Okay, so I'm Dave Saganek, Finance Committee Chair. So Bill mentioned several of the projects we're working on, and these are, labor intensive. The telecommunications surplus, the expenditures for the clubhouse expansion. So we've got some really committed members doing that. So that's in process, and we'll keep you updated as that goes along. Okay. And with regard to the workflow, I guess we called it the Sandoval AP workflow, AP standing for accounts payable. That was a 6-step process, and we looked at it again, and actually we came up with the exact same thing that Bill said. Of course, Bill and I talked about this. There didn't seem to be a step where a board member or Bill had oversight on the payments. So we certainly didn't want to exclude the board final approval, so I'm glad Bill mentioned that, but we had that in my report here. But we also looked at the step 1 about the vendors sending the email or the invoices to an email address that has a Gmail address. We feel we can tighten that security up, and it's going in line exactly what the Communications Committee is saying here. So that would be, maybe we could collapse 1 and 2, where 2 said the GM staff member logs into an email, which would have been a POPE address. Maybe we can work on that, okay? So we felt that that was something that would be an improvement. And then we also said, let's see how we're doing, okay? So over this next 6 months, where we expect to fully go to automation, let's take a look at those bills, and of course, Bill mentioned the reoccurring bills. Let's see how that's worked through the system. let's see if we could pay some attention to, gee, it flowed from step 1 through step 6 or step 5, whatever it is. We seem to have that down tight to a 7-day process, and just include a little report within the financial package or back to the financial committee that we can make sure that this is working. And then also, if we run into any bumps, let us know, and then see if we can work it out, okay? So I think that's a good way to work in collaboration. And then while we were looking at some of those invoices, Bill and I were talking about this. We suggested that on a time and expense invoice, we'd be a little more descriptive in terms of headings. So I included, I think this is posted, my report, if I'm not mistaken. I included a sample engagement type single engagement invoice where you have the date, you have the person doing the service, you have a little description, you have the hours, the hourly rate. Sometimes within a particular firm, people charge at different rates, and we usually distinguish that by a code, by initials and a name. So that was an improvement. And then going along with that, it's sometimes been helpful on time and expense to take the entire billing from inception and keep reporting it and show payments made, and then show at the bottom of the page what the total is and then the payments made to that, because sometimes these things last for a while and people are scratching, how much did we really put into this project? And we can actually incorporate a historical perspective right in with the invoice. So we thought that was good. And then I had the pleasure of attending the reserve study, which is in process. And I was there with several other people, and I'm making a suggestion that the board take a look at the current fee arrangement to that reserve study to include something called Foresight Plus. Now, we're in a stage where should we do something, should we not do something, should we build a clubhouse, should we not? And there's a lot of this moving back and forth. What is it going to cost? What's been attributed to that? At least on the reserve side, this option allows users to create Model Explorer and save various scenarios of the replacements and reserve contributions, allowing the board to easily and efficiently plan for the future. So I think that's right out of their website. I don't know what it costs, so this may cost some exorbitant price, but generally speaking, what the reserve study does is they create an Excel spreadsheet with their proprietary formulas. What they're doing is allowing you to take certain entries into that, not the formulas, but actually some, I'm coming up with a capital improvement. Let's put that in and see what the effect of reserves would be. So I think that's an improvement. Okay, so that's kind of the extent of the committee's report. But you heard tonight that there's a lot of time that goes into these committees. And I'm basically requesting the board tonight to separate my duties as a chair from a member, okay? I think I could be more effective, actually as a finance member. The duties associated with the chair, preparing reports, is really occupying a lot of my personal time. So what I'd like to do is make that request to the board to separate those duties out for me.
Okay. Dave, thank you very much. And we will certainly take that into consideration, and we appreciate everything that you do.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you.
So regarding the Finance Committee, I'm going to defer to the treasurer as to the organization and his suggestion.
Going forward immediately, I can certainly lead the meetings and keep things going. But it would be up to this board to decide if they want to reopen applications for people who want to assume that position. We did have a resignation, so there's an open seat. So we could add someone to the committee if we wanted to. So I would tell the board I can keep things running for the time being, and the board should decide how they want to proceed beyond that.
I would agree with that.
So I'm gathering that we're talking about Bill then assuming the role of keeping the committee going, and then if, as time goes on, if we decide that we want to appoint a chair, we'll then do that at a later date.
So I think the motion would be to appoint Bill as interim chair.
I'll make that motion.
Do you want a chair?
Oh, no, not me.
No, do you want to, do we want a chair?
I think it's going to be driven by the charter.
Yeah,
Interim.
we can
Okay.
do it. From
All right, then we have a motion to make Bill the interim chair, and do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor of Bill being the interim chair of the Finance Committee? Okay, so moved. Landscape Committee.
No. Your landscape committee continues to work with landscape companies, the Sandoval officials, and the Lakes Committee to identify what each entity's responsibilities are in various areas. Our goal is to spell out all of these areas, the parameters, their responsibilities, their expectations, out in writing moving forward so that we can help solve the homeowners' issues in a more timely fashion. You know, if there's something in a location like a tree, volunteer tree coming up in a lake bank, it gets kind of a gray area, kind of cloudy in between all of these different facets. So we have like landscape companies afraid to give us a bid to take it out, and you know, then they're afraid of the bank being changed or littoral getting upset, things like that. So moving forward, once we get all this spelled out and ironed out and in writing, we'll be able to get that whipped out really fast for you. It looks like maybe we're just not moving very fast in some of these things, but there's so much behind the scenes that we're actually working every day to solve that for you. We haven't forgotten you, I guarantee it. But to that end, that's going to mean we're going to have to rewrite some contracts at contract renewal time with some of our vendors to spell out our expectations and the parameters, and therefore reevaluating what we're going to offer to pay some of our contractors, like for our commons grounds. You know, is the fence line part of what they're expected or not? These are all things we need to like get in writing, and that way we can answer it fast. So right now, we are working really hard in all these different fuzzy areas, those gray areas. But as soon as we get that all ironed out, the wheel's gonna turn a lot faster for you. We're also continuing work on the plans approved list. And again, there's more than you think. It's not just some people sitting around like, we like this, we like that. So far from that. We have the City of Cape Coral rules and regulations to consider in this. Scott DeFilippis, our liaison, has agreed to help us with the legal part of this so we don't get ourselves in trouble. As far as the size of our lots that we have and how things were when the community was set up, all the oak trees were little, all the shady ladies were little, and they could put in the right amount per regulation. Then all of a sudden they grow up and there isn't room for anything else. So we are working really hard to make it more user-friendly for you all. But before we turn this loose for approval to the board for those changes, Scott's going to help us make sure that we don't get in trouble. Thank you, Scott. I get in enough trouble all by myself. People asked about mulch. When are we going to be doing our mulch? The vendors really like to do it more like in that December timeframe, but I've been on the other end of that, and about the time you do that, there's going to be a breakdown in the assembly line that bags the mulch for the provider. I prefer to do it more like October, November. My email is out there on the webpage. If you have a difference of opinion, send it to me now. More than happy to consider, but I'm more leaning towards October, November. That way we're sure we have it down and looking good, you know, when we need it. The rains are kind of eased up by then, so it's not going to wash away. Some of our more pressing concerns that we are working on are perimeter fences. That was another one of those little gray areas that I mentioned. They are in dire need of cleanup, both inside and out, and we've got saplings growing up actually into the cyclone fence and trees laying on them. But again, it used to be like a long time ago with different common vendors that was included in the common contract. And now, most recently, it was more like a pay by job situation and not part of what was expected of them. So this is one of those things that we have to iron out and arm wrestle and recontract for. And then we can make sure that it's done all the time routinely and kept up well for you. Another thing we're working on is moving shrubs off the Esplanade sidewalks and have a grass strip buffer between the shrub beds and the sidewalk for many reasons. Big one is safety. If you have bicyclists on that, kids with motorized scooters, people with long dog leashes, and you have fire bushes right in the bend of a sidewalk, and everybody that knows a fire bush knows it wants to be like super wide and super tall all the time, and we only pay the vendors a couple times a year to prune them. You know it's going to be out in the middle of the sidewalk. So what we want to do is move them farther back, have a grass buffer. So if you're meeting all this oncoming other traffic on the sidewalk, you can jump off into the grass on either side for safety, or you have a better line of sight, people approaching. The other is the quality of air. When you get those tall shrubs too close to the sidewalk, you have some dead space of air, and that's an issue in several places in town. Also for safety. If you look over towards Ashbury, where the tall bushes are like either side of the sidewalk and you're walking at dusk, it's kind of hard to see if anybody's right there. So we want to push it all back and put a grass buffer between the shrub beds and the sidewalk. Several things we're also looking at is addressing areas that need re-landscaped, filled in, or beds created where there were not any previously. Some of those that need to be created are Phase 3 with the Taylor Morrison and the Pine Island Gate locations. Coming up with our 5-year budget plan is another thing that we've been working really hard on so that we can see that historically there hasn't been enough money budgeted for like tree trimming. Heard a couple times mentioned tonight that we're already over budget in that, but it was all things that needed to have happened. If you have this many big trees in town, it's a danger not to keep them up, and it would be sad to lose the trees too for lack of proper care. So we will probably continue to go over budget with tree trimming between now and the end of the year. If you think about the coconuts ready to fall down at the pool, you can't just not do it. That has to be done. We just have a lot of really mature trees in town, and we need to kind of provide for that moving forward. Lastly, hopefully, you might have been noticing that the conditions of the turf and the shrubs are slowly improving in town. We've been working really hard on that, and hope you all are appreciating that. Thank you.
I do have an update before, and this is really for Scott as well as Allison. So, and also appreciation to the committee. The committee came to me with a request, wanted to know if they could all volunteer to transplant quite a bit, significant amount of plant material to save some money, and I can't thank you enough for that. Well, as a prelude to that, we at the board met with our insurance broker, who specifically said committee people, committee persons should not be engaging in that physical type of activity. But I did say that I would contact him again, and when I did, he was really sorry that he used, because I think he used the exact example of digging holes. Well, what he meant for you guys was more things like electrical work, climbing on ladders. We all kind of know what type of activity that has a little bit more exposure. So, but he did add a caveat. He said, yes, we can engage in that, but he had a caveat that he wanted us to sign a waiver, and that waiver he sent me, but he also asked that we get a legal opinion on the waiver. Well, once we do get that one legal opinion on that waiver, we can use it for everybody from this point forward. So I think it's going to be money well spent. But so at this point, yes, you will be able to do that project, but if you could give me a few more days to get that back from the attorney.
Sounds
Right.
good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Allison.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Lakes Committee?
Good evening, Board. I'm filling in, as you all know, Jim Niehaus has stepped down to pursue some other personal interests. So what I have to share with you is a 2-page report. I'll hit my 3 minutes, no problem.
3 minutes a page.
The first thing I would like to do, however, in seriousness, is on behalf of the Lakes Committee and Sandoval residents, I think we all owe a huge thank you to Jim Niehaus for the tireless pursuit he's put in. There's nobody who seems to have the kind of background Jim does in terms of the water and the plants around here. So he's been an amazing guy to work with, and we're going to miss him. Fortunately for us, he's slowly phasing out, so that's all good. As part of the transition, I think I pointed out in my report, with the leadership transition, we're now looking for a new committee chair for the Lakes Committee. The current members of the Lake Committee, and there are not many of them, are not interested in being in the chair, so we have to work on filling that position. In anticipation of that, we tried to prioritize things and get some things in place. The first thing I would like to note is, as Allison has alluded to, from our standpoint, our work with the Grounds Committee is like a night and day difference. She's an amazing woman to work with, and she's getting a crazy amount of good things done, so we want to thank Allison as well. Secondly, right now, the Aquatic Systems Lake Management Company that is in place is diligently working to improve our lakes, the quality of the water, and they're doing it without the use of the toxic chemicals that have been applied over and over again in the past. So what you're seeing is, we think on the Lakes Committee, the littoral's making an unprecedented rebound, at least in the 4.5 years that I've lived here. This has been the best spring and early summer for the littorals we've had in years. So that's really important. Again, I talked about prioritizing the things that we've put as a high priority. Is we will and are continuing our lake sampling for the 3rd year through the University of Florida Lake Watch program. We've completed those samplings for May, and that's an ongoing project. We have 10 consistent volunteers to be either out on the water or in a hot garage doing the processing, but it gets done every year. We've also added the Pond Watch program through Lee County. We, at the end of last month of April, we sampled all 25 lakes here in the community to get a baseline read on what the water quality is from their standpoint. Jim and I are going to be meeting with Ernesto, who did the presentation, to identify 5 key lakes that we'll continue to sample through Pond Watch going forward for the next year. And again, we have 4 amazing residents there that are committed to that and sampling those lakes every month. Additionally, I will personally be continuing to review and act on the aquatic systems site inspections that go to Jerry each month, and I'll work with Jerry to make sure that if there's any needed actions that we work on how we're going to come up with that. We're also continuing to strategize with aquatic systems, and Scott and I have agreed to work on the board to implement the Lakes Aeration Project as efficiently and effectively as we can through the remainder of this year. And then there are a number of other projects that are, I don't want to say less important, but a lower priority that we'll continue to work on, including educational resources that we've been working on, littoral monitoring and replacement. Hopefully we'll be able to put together a budget before budget season for ongoing littoral replacements throughout the coming years. We've talked with one of our resident volunteers about creating a lake keepers program that we'll talk more about in the coming months. And we want to continue to work with the Communications Committee, who's been amazing, to provide additional resources. There is so much information currently out on the website in the lakes section on water management, lake quality, the things that residents can do to make a real difference. And I want to thank the Communications Committee for helping us put that together. And lastly, I'm going to make a plea for residents. You know, we're in need of some more members of the Lakes Committee and a Lakes Chair, and we would welcome people who want to participate in the committee and help us continue to evolve the quality of the lakes here in Sandoval. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any questions?
Thanks. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Projects Committee is Jim Swigert. We do have a project that he has worked on, a street lighting proposal, and we'll discuss that subsequently. Security?
Good evening. My name's Gary Cootie. I'm the Security Committee Chair. The other member of the chair is Bob Adams. We initially met a couple weeks ago with Jerry, our initial security meeting, to kind of set our goals and objectives for the Security Committee moving forward. Our first two initiatives are going to be reviewing gate strikes in conjunction with Jerry to help make recommendations on what actions should be taken as a result of those. And secondly, we're in the process of reviewing the post orders for the security officers and their duties and responsibilities and what it entails, and make recommendations on how those can be improved. Both Bob and I have substantial law enforcement backgrounds, and I'm a semi-retired security consultant for the last 20 years, so I'm well versed in security operations, particularly with security guard companies. So we think that we'll be able to assist the board moving forward in these recommendations.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on board. Okay, we're going to move on to the ad hoc committees, and the first one is the sunshade.
I will sit here. I don't need to go up to the mic. Myself and Bill Tubb are the board liaisons for the ad hoc committee. We have not been formally, I guess, seated or chartered yet. So what we decided to do is we did have members of interest, which are Kenny Kaufman, Alicia Kaufman, Alice Short, and Todd Wynn. And again, we saw the need in the community and the want for Sunshade to move on for the playground. So we hit the ground running on May 7th, had our first meeting. That was held at my house at 6:30 p.m. And action items that we discussed were basically going to be the roles and responsibilities of the committees and its members as it rolled out. And again, the first thing we did is, and I thank Todd Wynn, probably, well, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe 2 years ago, he went out and got bids for the sunshade. We took those bids and had them rebid with those current vendors. And we were in the process of acquiring those prices. Kenny Kaufman brought up the idea, and I think it was a great idea, that we look for some support from outside vendors. And a great thing he mentioned was maybe like River Chase Dermatology, who is our new neighbor up at Surfside Shops. And they do it throughout the industry, whether it's this or others, where you get a vendor come in and, you know, hey, donate money, and then we'll put a plaque in recognition of. And that's a good idea, maybe to defer some of the costs thereof. So that was an idea. He's going to be running with that and report back to the board there, or the subcommittee, and then we'll get that to the board. We agreed to have another meeting on May 14th, same time and location. And in that board 14th meeting was a daytime meeting. Myself and Todd Wynn met with one of the vendors, Richard Donnelly of Apollo Sun Guard, at 12 p.m. out at the playground to discuss the shading and the options and what we were looking for. And then we began the regular meeting at my house with 2 conference calls from the vendors to discuss what, their options and what is available to us. And then we made a later site visit on the 16th with Josh Verones of Corcat Playgrounds, again, to discuss some options in his original bid. So we decided that both vendors needed to submit their quotes since they were outdated, and discuss changes that we came up with. And we're excited to report that we came up with playground coverage that exceeds size-wise the original proposal, and the cost associated with that is not going to be much greater than the original proposal. With the diligence of Todd Wynn and the rest of the committee members, we were able to secure those additional bids, which I'd like to at least give to the board tonight for at least their knowledge. So what we did is we really had a great conversation with them, and we were able to expand the coverage of the playground itself, exclusive of the swing set. So we're basically going to have an option of 44 by 34 with a 13-foot entry height, and that's going to be above the existing roof of that other one. That roof is going to be removed. They recommended that roof come off, they cap it, because the higher we go, the more sun penetration that we have. So we want to keep that entry height as low as possible. So some things we looked at, everything will be stainless steel, powder coated, steel structure. So basically, the one Corcat came in, their bid was $31,815. And that is going to be basically a hip roof, 4 posts, and that's going to facilitate us to be able to have, like I said, additional coverage out there, which will probably allow us to put in one spot, possibly a picnic table, if moms and dad or grandparents want to come in the shade, on a picnic table, watch their children or grandchildren play. And the other section will have a spot maybe for at least one of the park benches that we have out there, the recycled park benches. So that's another option that we could do. Now, Apollo SunGuard came in with a slightly larger coverage, 34 by 52. Again, powder-coated steel, all stainless steel hardware, and that came in at $39,923. So basically, they're both in the ballpark. The one at 39 is slightly bigger. And again, these are just some quotes that we can work with moving on forward. But I can say, you know, for the first 2 meetings in the 2 or 3 weeks that we've been meeting, these guys have really worked hard, put in a lot of hours to come up with some really great numbers for the sunshade for our children and the safety of the children. So moving forward, we're going to have a lot more to present as we get going on the Sunshade Committee. But those are the options and the pricing that we stand at right now. Appears that it's substantially less than the original quotes that we received 3 or 4 years ago. So we will have coverage for the safety of the children out there for, you know, sub $40,000.
I do have one question. What about the liability in hurricanes, and what about the ability to remove the canvas or whatever you have?
Great question. And both of the companies have the same thing. They're rated, I believe the shade itself is rated for 105 miles an hour. The structure, the steel, is rated for 165. So they have to meet the current code, wind mitigation code. But what they all recommend is, yes, if something is coming in, as we have our hurricane plan as we do now, make that part of your hurricane plan. 2 to 3 qualified people on site can remove that. What they would suggest is we're going back to install it, that the vendor comes in and installs it. That way, with the turnbuckles, they can get the tension right and everything, and so it needs to be. So there may be a cost associated with the reinstallation after we take it down for the hurricane, but the removal can be done in-house by 2 or 3 qualified people. Warranties are fairly substantial on all of those products. We're looking at 15 years on the fabric for one company, 10 years for the other fabric from the other company. And then all the prices also are including permitting and all the things associated with the city that we're going to need. Looking at, after we do all that, probably 1 week lead time to get it installed.
I have a question, Scott. The dimensions of the sails themselves, the canvas themselves. It is not to exceed the blue area currently, am I correct?
Correct. What we'll do is if we're looking straight out here now, it will be the closest spot to the building right now, and then it will go towards the swing set. And code says that we cannot have infiltration of that shade closer than a certain dimension on those swings because of the ability of the swing to swing, which is about 8.5 feet from a certain distance. So we cannot go 8.5 feet, give or take, towards those swing sets. So it will be ending right there. So basically what we'll have is where the kids discharge from both slides, the coverage will be over there. So if there's a parent waiting for them to come down the slide, they will also be in the shade too, but we won't be encroaching on that safety angle where the swings are. So everything else will be covered out there in the blue area.
So when your committee is prepared to bring more to the board, there will be schematics, am I correct?
Actually, we do have some, but again, these, we just
But
received these tonight.
schematics to our particular size and dimensions?
Absolutely, absolutely. They are ready with engineering designs and things like that will all be forthcoming. And if anybody wants to go out there at some point in time to just see, you know, generally the dimensions as to what's going to be covered and stuff, I'm more than happy to go out there and explain that to everyone. But that's preliminarily what we have so far.
All right, thank you very much. Clubhouse expansion.
Let me start off by saying that this expansion committee is really about communication and community involvement. And what that means is there are not going to be surprises here. This report is about what we've been doing and where we are. So let me just go through this. We've interviewed almost all 22 volunteers. We do expect to incorporate all the volunteers at some point. Currently, we're utilizing 5 dedicated volunteers. We have met weekly since the inception of the committee. We meet 2 to 3 hours a week, and we spend dozens of hours researching and analyzing the data received. So where are we? We are currently in what I would call phase 1 of the project. Phase 1 consists of getting up to speed on the history of the project. This step is essential to the future of the expansion. We cannot move forward without understanding the contracts we have, who has performed work for this project, and the amount of resident money spent to date. Also, what items of value are missing, if any. Now, I will remind everyone that this committee had virtually no knowledge of what had taken place prior to March 2019. In fact, not one member of the committee had even seen the base plans until April 14th. So after multiple attempts to communicate with individuals previously involved in the project, unfortunately, this committee has been relegated to trying to recreate the history of the project based on the pre-permitting documents sent to the city, incomplete architectural plans, bid documents, and even video archives. We are also reviewing contractual obligations, invoices, the amount spent on the project to better understand the previous budget. This is a slow, labor-intensive process, but is essential to capture any value of the money spent. We have had some communication with the current architect and the previous architect. What I want to emphasize here is once this initial phase is concluded, we'll be working with our volunteers to communicate the needs and expectations of the community and also do a full financial analysis. But I won't sugarcoat the progress. It's been slow. That said, and I want to be clear on this, the goal of this committee is to present viable expansion options to this community. And I just want to end by thanking these 5 dedicated, hard-working volunteers that have spent countless hours, and specifically Joe Beach, Rick Devine, Steve Cassens, Aaron Morrison, and Greg Willett. Thank you personally.
This is a tough project, and I'm telling you, the tenacity of these folks, I think, is to be commended. And again, I want to offer you my personal thank you. Taylor Morrison Litigation.
Our committee has met multiple times to monitor the progress of the claims. There are no significant updates to report. We continue to monitor the progress of the Phase 3 transition. We expect a more detailed report in the future when appropriate. And I just want to say thanks to the committee members for their time and effort. That's what I have for the TM litigation report.
Thank you. Capital improvement projects. Now that is Al Roper and Scott.
Yes, again, since we haven't been seated yet or chartered yet, but I have made contact with the members who expressed interest, which was Todd Frey and Linda Mooney, and I do thank them for stepping up and volunteering. We have not had a meeting, or there have not been any action items on that yet, but we did have a question arise from a member of the group about, and I don't know if this is the proper time to bring this up, but a perimeter fencing that may or may not be being looked at right now. And if it is there, and I probably am under the impression too that that is a capital project, and I believe some board members, I don't know who or whatever, but board members have solicited staff already to go out and get things, and I think that kind of undermines any board. That's the reason we put these boards in place, is to facilitate that type of streamlined process. And without a process which we put in place, if we're freelancing, that undermines the process. So I think we need to stay true to the charters and stay true to the ad hoc committees and the committees, and let them do their task. And I don't think it's up to an individual board member to be asking staff to do a project or whatever.
Who's the board member?
I don't know. I'm just going by.
I don't think there's any board member that has done that. I think that the management has taken that as something that deemed needed to be evaluated, because there's a couple of spots in the wall that is up with plywood, and I don't think any board member has directed or undermined the
I've asked
committee
for
at all.
status updates. I'm a bit frustrated with the progress of the cement wall on my street, and I wanted reasons why it was taking so long, so I apologize if for some reason there's been a communication issue, but frankly, my patience is running thin with that, the progress of that.
And so I would add that I did direct Mark, our operations manager, to go ahead and get bids, not only for the concrete, but also alternatives as well.
Okay.
But we will turn that over to the committee, and point taken. And I think we need to share our data with you, and he's just getting to the point where he's finalized that. So I think tomorrow or next week, I'll direct him to get with you and your committees.
And that's, like, again, why we have this. Again, this is a board meeting, and that's why we need to discuss this stuff as to what is relevant, what is gossip, what isn't. So, but yeah, no apologies necessary. We're just trying to, again, this is focusing on a lot of things that haven't taken place previously. So now that we have the vehicles in place.
Agree completely. Point taken.
The next item is the street lighting proposal, and this is a special project that was started by Jim Swigert many months ago. It was a big concern, and it was one of the things that was on the safety list back in 2015, that we needed some street lighting on the Anguilla-Belleville curve, and it has been pointed out that there is a dark area at Somerville, and there has also, if you notice in Phase 3, every street going down the Parkway has a light opposite on the T of every intersection except the last two. Maleta and Kay's Circle have no light on the, as we're looking at the conference going off to the left. And then at the Pine Island Gate, every gate that we have here have lights on both sides of the road, and that we have lighting only on the exit side. And we need lighting on the entrance side because we have kiosks, and it's dark there, and you have people coming up. So that is an omission. The engineering and the design of the Pine Island Gate is something that, if you could do over and everyone would coordinate it, and would there have been any discussions that we wouldn't have taken, 2.5 years to do and still have things missing. So Looking at, in our community, for the safety purposes, there's 7 areas, 7 lights that are needed. So started by looking at lights on the 100 feet of that transmission line, so you couldn't put the street lights on the right side of the road, which would be opposite the houses, and that meant that lights would possibly have to be by the houses. How many lights do we need there? There was a engineering study done by DEI, and that study showed 2 more lights at the Belleville intersection. But if you go out and look at the area, it needs lights on the curve. That's where it's dark. So we took that into consideration. So then we looked at some solar lighting, and you know, solar lighting, you know, might work well, but until you've done it the first time, you know, there's some hesitancy. Al Roper and I and Jim went to the company. We looked at their solar light, which is in Fort Myers. I mean, there's tons of light. I mean, really bright. So then we looked at something that was a little more, not just a light pole with a light on the top, but, you know, some more decorative lights like we have here. Al and I looked at some HOAs that had that. And we weren't impressed because the light was filled with water and there were bugs, and I didn't think it was the quality that we needed, and so we sort of tabled that. So then we started the Lakes Project. Well, in doing the Lakes Project, we're going to be adding probably 5 or 6 areas with additional electrical meters to do these lakes, and so I spoke with Jim and Al, with Steve Hayden, and he gave us a bid on installing lights in these 7 areres. Well, then Al Roper decided to check with the company that makes the lights, and we had their salesman come, and he looked at the type of cement posts we have, the type of light fixtures we have up, and he gave us a bid on how much it would cost to purchase ourselves 7 lights. Steve Hayden gave us a price of how much it would cost him with Bose Electric to get those lights. We can way undercut the price by ordering them, buying them ourselves. So then we got a proposal for installation of the lights. And us purchasing the lights and installing the lights comes to $40,699,000. The cost of electric, LCEC charges us $37 per light throughout the community, so you factor that in, and I'll explain that in a minute to you. The electric on that $37 is about $125 a year if you use LED lights. So that times 3 is $315. So the total cost of doing the HOA lights owned is about $41,000. LCEC gave us a proposal, and it costs to install the lights. They own them. We pay them $37 a month. Over 9 years, it's $34,000 to install them. Maintenance is $9,000 over the 3-year period. So the cost, if we use the LCEC provided lights, would be $43,766. So looking at the 2 bids, that's much cheaper if we buy the lights, have the LEDs, and we're all set. The other thing is that Bose Electric will provide a 3-year maintenance agreement with the installation of the lights, so it will cost us no additional cost, no $37.50, and they're guaranteed to keep them running for the 3-year period. So these lights should last, you know, for, you know, let's just use 10 years. They're going to last 20 more than likely. But let's just say 10 years, and we're still paying the LCEC $37 per light per month per year. From years 4 to 10, the HOA-owned lights will save us $21,000. Less the bulbs or the eyes or whatever would be needed to maintain these lights, and we could probably get a maintenance contract way under that. Or you could buy the fixture for that because they're $1,700 a piece. So I see that this would be my recommendation to go forward. Now, I will mention on the Bose estimate, there are 2 other items that are on there, which probably, the first one is $1,900 for changes in the veterans permitting, because when the city came out, the way they had originally put it on the plan for the electrical portion of their bid was, which was $111,000. They had to change the permit. They had to move where the lights were, the boring. They couldn't go angle across the roadways. They had to go vertically across. So the new permitting was $1,900. So then the other item that is on that bid, by the meter is at the Veterans Gate. And if we would bore under the road to the inside island and then put the pump for the Verdmont Lake on that island, which is around no homes, we could then put an electrical outlet, a 110 electrical outlet, so if at any time in the future we would want to put low voltage lighting on the palm trees, we would have the source to do that. There's another fee that was included, or estimate that was included in that, was to do a bore from the island where the gates are to the outside islands where these other trees are, and that would be a $2,700 additional fee, but while they're out there boring, it could be done at the same time. So the bid for Bose Electric is $23,000. The cost to purchase the lights is $21,000. So that's where the $41,000 comes up, and I utilize the estimate with a 10%, plus or minus in case something came up, that the estimated funds required to do this street lighting proposal would be $46,000. And I think that this project, and I think in a future project of dealing with parking is something that, we could consider. And when the expansion gets done, that will be taken out of that. I mean, that would not be the whole parking, but parking by the tennis court, parking at the dog park, so that there's not going to be a safety issue. I think that sometime in the future is a special project that needs to be evaluated. So that's my street light proposal, and I'll entertain motions, discussion, whatever the committee would like to do.
Question: the posts themselves are going to be identical to what we have on our streets now?
Yes.
The concrete post. What about the light fixture itself?
The light fixture will be an LED fixture, and it will match similarly to, and I can show you the picture. And then there's about 10 different specifications on dealing with the specifics of the light fixture that we would go on. The Kelvin of the bulb,
That was my next.
3,000 versus 4,000.
Right.
The voltage. There's about 10 different things.
Because my type A personality would hate, when we're going down the boulevard, see one light that's orange and the other one that's,
I haven't seen.
it's like
I haven't seen them lit. So it was my question as well.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get to you.
I was just going to ask, is it possible to change our present lighting to LED, since it's so much more economical?
Well, the problem with what we've got now is with LCEC, they own the lights. We don't own the lights.
Oh, okay.
Even after we've paid $37 a month for X number of years, we still don't own the lights. We have one light here at Ashbury. That is a T intersection that has 2 lights. So we thought, well, gosh, we can take that second light and move it down to Somerville. That's right. We don't own it. We don't own it, and they won't move it.
Okay.
So
It's like the city lights.
So our lighting bill here is $100,000 for street lights.
Which is why
with
I
all
thought
these
the
maintenance
LED
charges. So,
would make a lot of
it is
sense.
an exorbitant number, but, we're stuck.
We're stuck between a rock and a hard spot.
Yeah.
We
Then
have to have them,
Yeah.
they own them, and we have to
Right.
to pay the piper.
Right, and see, the
whatever
only
the piper
reason
charges.
that this is even possible is that because we did this aeration lake project, we've got some electrical meters in the close vicinity.
I see.
So you can
Then
utilize both.
obviously, the motion should be that the HOA do the project and not LCEC.
Well, that's this what I'm recommending.
Yeah.
So, I'll entertain your question, Steve.
Let me preface my remarks by that. The last 5 years, I've worked for Philips Lighting and Electronics, doing street light projects across the entire United States. I've worked with local utilities, municipalities, private institutions, soup to nuts. One, stay with LCEC, have them do the work. They own them. You renegotiate what we have now to go down to LED at $37. Right now, they're charging us maybe $45 a light.
No, they're charging us 37.
Okay, well, for LEDs, because they use, 80% less energy.
Yeah, but the only,
You go to LEDs.
Out of the $37, only $5 that is an energy charge.
Right. So you can substantially reduce that, but their maintenance cost, those high-pressure sodium bulbs are barely good for 18 to 24 months. You've all seen them cycle. The LEDs, they never see them again.
Yeah.
So I've been in personal negotiations with utilities across the United States to renegotiate those contracts, to get it down from 37 for people who have substantial numbers of lights, down to as low as $12 a month. So there's two issues. I don't want to turn you upside down, but if your lights are owned now by LCEC and they maintain them, my recommendation is you stay with LCEC, let them worry about them. Second, you don't want them on any meters. They're not metered now. So we're putting in electricity. You don't want them on a meter.
Why not?
Because LCEC doesn't meter it. They give you a fixed charge.
I don't buy that one.
Yeah, no, I'm serious. All the streetlights now have no meter.
I know, but you're still paying $37 a month for it.
Well, it's flat. They know what the fixture uses in terms of energy.
Yeah, $5.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, an LED is going to use about 25%. That's $1.25.
Yes, right.
Well,
but the maintenance is substantially less on the LEDs.
Well, that's why if you own them yourself, we're not going to be paying anything else.
So let me ask you a question here, though. What happens, let's just say, a storm comes through, and an LCEC light pole gets knocked down, or a car hits it and gets knocked down? Who pays for that light pole?
LCEC.
Somebody hits a HOA-owned, or a hurricane or a storm comes through, knocks down that HOA light pole. Who pays for it?
The association.
And
you maintain it. So now you've got two different systems on the property.
It's just turned upside down.
My experience. Take it for what it's worth. Okay.
It's not good. We're expecting. If we're going to do the boring, it has to be do the boring for the other.
Can I speak to, my Kiwanis Club tried to negotiate with LCEC. They won't do it.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
I think it's perhaps worth a try, but I don't think they'll do it. I think that, in fact, I talked to Trish Lassiter, who is my contact because she handles City Hall, and she says with the LED lighting, they are going by different service areas and providing the LED light, but they don't have a listing of service areas because I wanted to find out where Cape Coral might lay, because their service areas goes to the East Coast and Marco Island, and it's a broad service area. So I just wanted to find out where Cape Coral fell, and they don't have a listing. I could not find that out. So it's possibly worth a try to get them to reduce that $37, but I don't think they'll do it.
Jim has talked with them, and they're not interested in reducing it, and they're not interested in putting in LED lights.
I know. They're tough to deal with.
Very much so.
I forgot my Phase 3, like Lambay, Vario, at the end of the streets, they omitted a light. It's very dark. Someday some child is going to be walking along there and get hit.
Well, this is where we brought up before, though, previously, when we were doing the landscaping out at Veterans, it's dark coming in and out. We actually put one in, but, and I mentioned this before, on the PDP, and I might, kind of deflect to Marilyn here, where we can get at least the electrical PDP for here and see what was supposed to be here before we spend any money on things that if that light post should have been here, that should be one of the negotiated things that
You
they
mean for
pay on their exit.
Taylor Morrison.
Correct.
I don't know why
You
they
got
let
it?
them off, but it's incredibly dark.
You're asking things that you think are a great idea, but I'm telling you, in dealing with Taylor Morrison, I don't think you'll ever see them.
I was going to ask you if it was possible, before we proceed with this, to go to LCEC and see about replacing them all with LEDs, but it sounds like you've already done that.
Well,
So
Jim's talked to them about it.
Okay.
I mean, I can't tell you formally because I can't speak for him, but my conversation with him mirrors what Marilyn says.
Am I perceiving this correctly, that all of this ties in with the electrical work that we're having Bose do
Correct.
in the borings, and we have to make a decision before they start the borings, or we're going to lose this opportunity?
That's
Is that,
also correct.
is that correct?
Yeah. But that's your choice.
When are we starting the borings of
Well,
the
the
underground?
first permittings are already signed, and they're being submitted, and he's negotiating that already, and he can have borings done where he's not putting wires in, so pretty much right away.
Okay, so we're talking within the month that they're
Well,
more
I
than
was under
likely
the
gonna
assumption that,
Within the next week or 10 days, for somebody, probably you, talk to LCEC to see if there's a change, if in fact we can get a reduction.
I
But
think
if we
Jim's
can-
done that. I mean, Jim's the one that talks with them all the time. Jim Swigert.
That's why I'm thinking a different personality might have a different result. But
Yeah.
I-
Well, if the city is, and Jim Swigert has not had a positive response from them, it would be very doubtful. So I am looking at this as a time-sensitive decision on our part, whether we're going to utilize the borings and pay for this ourselves, or
But if nobody wants to do it, then I guess we move ahead with,
Well, I recommend we
Wait.
table this discussion. We'll take it up next month,
pardon?
probably.
No, no, I don't support.
Well, I mean, I don't want dissension. I don't think that, I think people are not going to be happy with what's decided, so.
well,
I
this
think
is a board decision.
And I think an important component of this is that we're already doing the borings as part of the aeration, so we're piggybacking another project for a cost savings. That would be my comment on it, so. If we,
Want to go forward with this as is, that's fine.
And I understand the cost savings, and after looking at what you just told me, Bill, I think we should be looking at cost savings. But I personally have a problem with owning infrastructure as lights and stuff, just for the sheer fact of now we own that, and if somebody hits it, a storm comes, we're on the hook to replace it. So, I think it's a great idea. And I hate to use the word conflicted, but to me, to start owning infrastructure, streetlights and things like that, even though, yes, you can argue the point, we own infrastructure, we own the streets, we own all that sort of stuff, so to project it
21,000.
out. Yeah,
And that's
Yeah.
for 10 years,
Right.
and they'll probably last 20 years, LED lights.
And if someone uses a vehicle as a hit in anything,
it's gonna be insurance driven.
Yeah.
well, we're going to get their insurance, or
Right.
we're going to go after them that
Well,
way.
the light fixture itself, $1,700, so
So it's not huge.
No, it's not.
And I'm thinking that with $21,000 in savings, if we have a storm and half of them blow down, we've saved enough money to put them back up.
Well, Bill, is there a motion to accept this bid?
Well, then why don't, decision that if the LCEC has nothing better to offer, would we accept this bid?
Yes, I certainly would support that.
What is our funding source?
Well, the funding source will have to be the Century thing.
Well, then I'll make the motion that We do one more check with LCEC to see if there's an option. If there's not, we proceed with this being funded out of the CenturyLink funds.
I'd second that. No meeting as necessary.
Okay, well, then Jim will contact them, and if he and Steve want to go together, that's fine with me.
I think that might be. Ron seconded the motion, with Jim Swigert making a last-ditch request with LCEC. If that is not positive, then we will go with the street lighting proposal as presented this evening.
Yes.
Marilyn, or Bill made the
Bill.
motion.
Bill.
Ron seconded the motion.
And the funding source is CenturyLink.
And the funding source is CenturyLink. Well, if we have someone who gives us a grant, that'd be fine too. Okay, that's
I hear you.
Okay, so now, any further discussion?
I hear you.
Okay, so then I call the vote. All those in favor of checking with LCEC one more time. If they have not changed at all with their position, then that we would accept this proposal and go forward with it. Funding from CenturyLink. Aye. Okay.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed?
The Sandoval Taylor Morrison Ad Hoc Charter, you want to just report regarding selection of counsel, fee arrangements, tactics, additional claims, and settlement offers. Confidentiality. In order to preserve the attorney-client privilege, all members of the committee are prohibited from disclosing information conveyed in committee sessions with legal counsel with anyone outside of the committee or the board of directors. The only exception is periodic updates given to the community by the committee. Don Wells, Al Roper, Dave Hiller, and Dave Graham. Communication. All communication with council will come from the committee chair. Adding, removing committee members. Members of the committee may be removed via majority vote of the board of directors or written notice of withdrawal from the member.
A motion to approve the charter.
Make a motion.
Second? All in favor? Discussion. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the charter as presented, signify by raising your hand. Those opposed? Okay, the charter would then be approved. And now there's a resolution regarding establishing the legal committee. Since this is legal, we have to do this as well. Ron, you want to read that? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have a copy of it in front of me.
Right here.
Thank you. Resolution regarding establishing legal committee, Sandoval Community Association. Whereas Sandoval Community is a non-for-profit Florida corporation responsible for the administration, operation, and management of Sandoval Community located in Lee County, Florida. And whereas the board of directors of the association is responsible for the day-to-day operation and management of the community, and whereas the board wishes to establish a legal committee concerning the association's claims against Taylor Morrison, whereas the board wishes to ensure the legal committee is covered by the attorney-client privilege between the association and the association's counsel. Now, therefore, be resolved as follows. The above recitations are true and correct, and each and every one is incorporated herein in its entirety by reference. The association, by the adoption of the resolution, hereby establishes the legal committee as described in its charter attached as Exhibit A. The initial members of the committee shall be Ron Spooner, Don Wells, Al Roper, Dave Hiller, and David Graham. The board may add or remove members without adoption of a revised resolution or charter, and such changes shall be reflected in the minutes of the applicable board meeting. There are 7 board members. The number of board members who voted in favor of this resolution will be listed here. The number of board members who voted against this resolution will be listed in here. The vote of each director is reflected in the minutes of the meeting in which the resolution was adopted.
Okay, motion, and there's 1 board member absent, so there would be 6 in favor, none against, and that motion is approved. Okay, the next item is the board communications policy.
So in everybody's board pack, you have a copy of the current Sandoval Community HOA Board of Directors Communication Policy. And then on pages 2 and 4 are the only additions.
And can you're not hooked up.
Hello? Test. Hello? Test, test, test. I think I can talk loud enough, so look at it.
Yeah, we're going to hand down.
You can talk loud enough here, but you can't talk loud enough.
The two changes, or the two additions, that's fine. The two additions are number 4, policy oversight.
Excuse me, Jerry. We can't get it on recording unless we use a microphone.
Thank you.
Test, can you hear me? The only additions to the current Board of Directors communication policy are on page 2, and it's highlighted in yellow for the board members. The CL is required to obtain a board vote on material being distributed to the public prior to the distribution. And then the second one on page 4, number 8, social media. The communications committee will assist the board in administering board-approved social media platforms. In doing so, the Communications Committee will abide by the board-approved policy for each social media platform. So I would look to entertain a motion to approve the amended board communication policy as submitted.
Motion.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. On the item number 4, it's the CL is the liaison is required to obtain a board vote on the material being distributed to the public prior to distribution. I think that all board members need to be aware of what's in there prior to distribution, because I think, if something goes out under the auspices of HOA board, you at least need to know what went out. And so to say a board vote, I don't know whether that's the legal terminology we need to have on that.
I think the thing to consider is the board is voting on the liaison to oversee that, to make sure something like that doesn't happen. However, if you still would like more participation, I think a board vote would be appropriate.
But are we requiring a board vote by every member before we publish something on?
That would be logistically an issue.
That's how I read this. I think this is a little.
I think we just require the CL to have that responsibility.
No, I don't. That's my point. I think it's important that everybody sees the document or has the opportunity. Now, if it's sent out, many of these things are time sensitive. So if the item is sent to every board member, and if they have not responded, a negative response is an affirmative.
And no responses.
So
no
distribution,
response.
Yeah.
a requirement for distribution then?
So
Yeah.
raise
Vote.
objections or remain silent.
Right. I don't know how to terminate the terminology we need, but I don't think board vote is. That's like having a board meeting.
I think that's why we have the CL too. He's working in the capacity of.
He is, but I also think it's important that, if you see something and you go open your phone up and you read the email that your HOA sent out and you're a board member and you haven't seen it before, I don't think that's right.
Do you want to put some type of requirements around it, like 2 hours, 4 hours, something otherwise it's just going to be said and gone?
Or we can just leave it up to the discretion of the CL to have the responsibility to communicate the information to the other board members and give them an opportunity to object.
I like that, I really do.
But that's
because-
what I think
yeah.
we need.
Okay.
And hold them responsible.
Sure.
Because the fact that you didn't object doesn't mean you saw it to
Correct.
be able to object. So somehow he has to affirm that everyone has seen it, and then they've.
Well,
they've
that's
had the
hard too.
option.
If you're not a town and we want to get something out,
Yeah.
That's almost
Yeah.
similar to a vote.
yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Well,
That's
no,
similar
but-
to a vote, what you're saying.
Well,
here.
actually, if, say, I was out of town and you couldn't get in touch with me, you would still have a majority of the board who did affirm, so even if I did object, it wouldn't have made a difference.
I don't think these things are going out that are going to be objectionable. I just think that you need to be seeing them.
But we've had experiences in the past where,
Well, that's
where
true.
you did not see things that went out under the
Oh,
board's name.
Absolutely.
So
That's why I think we need to.
Somehow
that's
we
why
have to
That's why when
affirm.
we discuss this, instead of having the liaison approve it, I think it's important we all get a chance to look at it.
So how about that we change it to, the CL is responsible to distribute material to the board as early as convenient prior to being distributed to the public? So the requirement is to distribute it as soon as possible, but prior to it going to the public,
Read that again, please.
from the CL.
As soon as practically possible, rather than
Practically possible.
convenient. It might not be convenient for him.
Can
Do you have any comments on this, Doug?
No, I think it's very important that the board sees it. If the label is going to be.
Yeah, that's my point, and we discussed that together, and that was what my intent was.
The other point is that it's not a problem at all for us to send it to the board, make sure everybody sees it. The problem is on the other end of how long do I have to wait before I can move forward with time-sensitive information? And that's, that should be you and I negotiating that down.
Right.
You're the other liaison besides
I'm the
you.
liaison.
Okay. Do you have the ability to do if you send it out in a text, do you have the ability on your email to do
I'm normally not the one that sends it out.
whoever,
I normally send it.
can you set out a read receipt too? So if it's read, you'll know? So that'll kind of be a verification, a read receipt on that email.
I like that.
And then if you saw 4 out of the 7 go, because there's your majority of the board members.
Sure.
I mean, we have to put some responsibility on ourselves to do.
No,
check.
exactly,
Right,
exactly.
right, yeah.
And we certainly don't want to slow the process
Right.
down.
That motion will be as amended.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, we're amending the
Yeah.
motion to.
You have that
Right.
ability. I mean, it's an easy,
I'll have to figure it out, but I'll try to do that. Sounds like a good idea.
That would, consensus is a
Yes,
better
I like,
word.
I think I should obtain consensus.
So that the CL is required to obtain a census.
Consensus.
Consensus on.
We may do a census, but
material prior to
later.
being distributed.
Correct.
Yeah, and that's just a
I
one-word
think
change.
that's a one-word change. Okay, does everyone, the motion is to change the word vote to consensus. Okay, motion,
Okay, well, hold on.
second.
No, we have to get it, we moved, Scott moved and Marilyn seconded.
To amend the word vote to consensus.
No, they did not.
Doesn't
Move on
Marilyn
that.
have to agree to her second, and then Scott has to agree to his motion? And then he re-motions and she re-seconds and we proceed.
As amended.
Yes. Yeah.
correct, and we'll do all of that, correct? And there we go.
And I'm supposed to write it down like that.
You said it, you got it. I trust you emphatically.
You got 6 names to pick from.
I am going to be reviewing this over and over.
Okay,
again.
all right, let's vote on this.
On what?
We're voting on changing the word vote to consensus. All in favor? Okay, so now we are going to vote on the changing the social media policy as amended. All those, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. All right. Now, we have a resolution establishing, the conduct one. Do you want to do that, Tony, or you want to? Do you want to do this?
I'll do it. We have a resolution establishing appropriate conduct policy, drafted by legal counsel. Whereas Sandoval Community Association is for the nonprofit Florida corporation responsible for administration, operation, management of Sandoval Community, located in Lee County, Florida, and whereas the Board of Directors Association is responsible for the day-to-day operation of management of the community, and whereas in order to ensure a congenial and productive environment, the board wishes to establish a conduct policy regarding owner and resident interaction with the association employees as well as other owners and residents. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. 1, the above recitations are true and correct, and each and every one is incorporated herein its entirety by reference. 2, owners, residents, and their guests and invitees are at all times required to conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. Displays of temper or other discourteous conduct, disrespect, shown to association employees or fellow owners and residents, and actions resulting in physical damage to others and/or to association property are typical but not exhaustive examples of improper behavior which could result in disciplinary action, including reprimand, fine, and/or common facility use right suspension. 3, the board shall be the sole judge of what constitutes improper behavior. 4, in the event any owner or resident fails to comply with this conduct policy and engages in improper conduct, such individual shall be subject to appropriate enforcement action by the association, which may include the imposition of fines, suspension of common facility use rights, and any other appropriate legal action as determined in the sole discretion of the board. There are 7 board members. The number of board members who voted in favor of this resolution is, we'll go ahead and go with the vote, and we'll fill that in.
Okay, my suggestion is that no one has seen this other than just right now. And I would like everyone to look at it, and I would like to recommend that we consider this over the next month, and then we would discuss it and maybe have a vote on it. Okay?
So we're tabling this until next month.
Well, someone wanted to make that motion. I'm making the recommendation. Okay. Yeah, in a second, and then this will be then put on an agenda for next month for consideration.
I make the motion to table.
Okay. All right. All in favor? Okay.
Does this mean I can't smash Ron in the face if I decide?
He's handicapped, he's off
Exactly.
limits.
Yeah.
Don't make me take my boot off.
Kick him in the foot?
Yeah, if he takes that off and hits you, you're in sad shape.
Okay.
When is our meeting next month? I may not be here.
I'll tell you right now.
We leave the 20th.
Fourth
I
Thursday.
think you're not going to be here.
6, 13, 20, 27, June 27.
No, I'll be gone from the 20th to the 30th.
Okay. Okay, any additional agenda items? Motion to adjourn?
I so move.
Adjourn. Open forum for residents.
Open forum for residents. First speaker, Daniel Robbins.
I'm on the landscape, I'm Dan Robbins, by the way. I'm on the landscaping committee, and as per Allison's instructions, we were going around observing. And while I was observing today, I think I have found a severe security issue, and I made a video of it. And the first thing is, on Lamb Bay, where the circle, the 2 streets, and then the horseshoes. At the end of the horseshoe, there's a double chain link fence with a lock and chain on it, but it is not attached. You can walk through it, you can push it, and I see foot traffic. There's been something coming through there. You can tell the grass has been walked down with footprints. I'm going to show you this quick video I made of today. I think it needs to be addressed because people come through there in the middle of the night, and nobody's going to know there because there's no observation from any of the homes. All the homes do not look this way. They look towards the street. So I want to show you this quickly. And the decision is yours on the repair and how fast we could get it done.
That'll be an operations issue, and we'll take that, turn that over to Jerry to take care of that.
Come by the office tomorrow if you can. I'll view the video and I'll take corrective action on it. It's a gate that goes into Bridle Lane, which we own, and I'm guessing it's probably maintenance access, but it doesn't need to be. There's other alternatives. But why don't you come to the office? I'll look at the video and I will take corrective action. But I will take care of it.
Be patient here, and I'm half asleep.
I'll be happy to take care of that issue.
Tomorrow, and inviting all these people, my expert photographing.
Well, I appreciate you coming, and it was certainly worth your while. So.
It's loose on all the ends, and a good windstorm will blow it down.
Very good.
Give it to us, we'll put it on the video. So I'm gonna have to stand
There you go.
and watch that, make sure nothing comes through and frighten my wife.
Here's the next one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jim Anderson.
Thank you.
What time tomorrow, Jerry?
I'm wide open, so 9 o'clock would be great.
Good, I'm an early bird.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the board this evening. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, Jerry and I have discussed the pond in Somerville between the condos. And that originally, up to about probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, that has been sprayed and taken care of under the Sandoval contract. And I'd like to remind everyone that pond is connected to all of the other 24 other lakes within the community. And I'm told that the maintenance has been suspended on that particular contract for spraying and other things that are done. The second question I have on the pond is the February meeting on that. Those are aerated at present time, probably for the last 10 years. And the maintenance of the aerators as well as the power source, that was also, I believe, going to be involved with once the aeration started, that would be taken over as well. Presently, we have a contract that ends on June 1st with the present company, Lake Doctors, that manage that for us, the aeration portion. But more concerning is that presently that's not being sprayed or tended to with the contract that Sandoval has. So at least our discussion, Jerry and I, we have not come to any kind of resolution to what actually took place, and that should be included. That's been a service that's been provided for Somerville for many years, at least the 4 years that I've lived here. So I'd like to get that resolved, number one, because it's not being treated at this point in time, and then secondarily is the aeration piece.
So, talking with the contractor, Lexus, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Lexus. She is out in the field all the time, deals with the Lakes Committee. She tells me that lake is being maintained for weed control, et cetera, just like all of our other lakes are. The only thing in question, in my mind, was the maintenance on the aeration. And for the board's awareness, Jim was under the understanding that when we improved if he didn't already say it, I'm just recapturing it, that he was under the impression that when we approved the lake aeration project, that was a part of it, that we would take over their aerator maintenance. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep. And I don't have any knowledge of that in past meeting minutes.
It was the February
we're gonna
meeting that
have
at
to-
least generally was brought up, and certainly there was no vote taken at all. So thank you for at least the spraying portion of it, because there was a question about that.
Nope, that's
in our
correct.
discussion, so that's good.
We've got it.
So we haven't gone backwards as it relates to that.
That's correct.
But then going forward with the aeration, obviously we either need to renew the contract, or when the contract ends, then end it there and have that assumed by
Just out of
Sandoval.
curiosity, do you know off the top of your head what that cost was per month?
It's approximately $1,300 a year. It's for a quarterly service, and there's pumps involved, and then obviously the aerators themselves, and then the power to that.
Okay, so you're saying that not only the maintenance, but any type of repairs and replacement?
Correct. Everything is in order at this point in time. It's been serviced. The pumps one of the pumps were replaced, and they're not expensive, but they do need to be maintained. So those have been maintained, and then also the aerators were pulled this year and cleaned as well. So prior to that, I'm not sure how long it's been, but no one in the community could recall the last time that they were serviced. So everything is up to date at this point in time. We took that initiative last year on our own to get that taken care of. But obviously, that has been one of the lakes that has been probably one of the healthiest because of the aeration, and used as an example in a lot of discussions. So.
Okay, so I think the options here would be, this is, the board may be able to make a decision right now on that $1,300 plus repairs and maintenance, or
we've adjourned.
defer.
We've adjourned.
We've
Oh, yeah,
adjourned.
my fault.
We can make it a first action
Yeah.
item next month.
Yeah, we can, so you can extend that 1 month with Lake Doctors? Because
Yeah, or a quarter. We'll contact them and find out. Yep. So we'll go one way or another. We want to
I
continue
will
on
put,
with that maintenance.
with the
agreement.
board's permission, I'll put that on the agenda for next
Well,
month.
I know that the walls and the roads were approved, and there was a document that took over those. I don't know of anything that, any formal action by the board that talked about the lakes. Maybe there were some assumptions, but I don't think there was any formal action.
As a liaison now, but as a former member of the Lakes, I don't know if it was a formal, but it was implied that since we were taking over the streets and the wall, that we would take over well, we do the maintenance. We would take over the aeration project that's there, since we're going to have on-site people doing that. So I do remember, again, that was just as a Lakes Committee member, not a board member, but I believe it was implied that, yes, we would take over your single-station pump there in conjunction with what we had, but it would be at the time when our project came online. That's when, and that was, again, nothing in writing that I remember, but that wasn't in my purview. But what I would say now going forward, as a board member and the liaison, you mentioned, you alluded to, that they pulled the diffusers and cleaned those. Now, as you know, the diffusers that we're getting, we don't have to pull those. They're self-cleaning. They oscillate those, they clean. So maybe we would look into the possibility, and again, I'm not saying it's, but of upgrading your aerators or your diffusers, which might actually cost us less in the long run, so you don't have somebody going out, having to pull those aerators physically, do it themselves. So that could probably dovetail in this
Maybe
for next month.
possibly Somerville could improve their aeration to the standard of what the others are going to be, and then there could be something maintenance. I don't know that, I mean, there has
Yeah.
to be a little give and take here.
Absolutely, agreed, yeah.
I think first we need to look at the minutes and see if there's anywhere where that the board obligated us to do that.
Right.
And then if they did, then, you know, that's fine. But if not, then, you know, just because we took over the roads and the walls doesn't mean we assume that we took that over either.
Yeah, again, I think that was previous.
Formally and in writing, that's my point.
Absolutely,
That's
and I
my
don't think
point.
that.
More comment.
During the February meeting, there was a statement read as it relates specific to the aerators that Joe read. And during that statement that was read, he specifically called out the Somerville aeration system and the fact that it is the best lake within our community at that particular time. But in his statement, he specifically, called out that the board would be taking over the maintenance of those particular aerators. He also specifically called out to our rec board president, Karen, that those aerators are currently in prime operating condition, and that the plan was that we would not be replacing those currently with the new aeration installation, but that the service of those would be taken over immediately, and that then those aerators would be replaced at a future date when appropriate maintenance is required. The board then did vote to approve that plan. So that was our assumption, is based upon the statement of the plan and the aeration process moving forward. Then when the vote came across in the February meeting to approve the plan, that's where we're getting our assumption that aerators were part of
So I
said
think what
plan.
happened
We need to
was-
see what the written document says, and then we'll have to abide by that.
I don't think Joe had the authority to commit the boards unilaterally. I think it would have to be a board action, and it should be in the minutes if it was a board action.
That's
So-
my,
and
that's,
so we
that's,
should
that's
live-
my point.
We should live by
That's my
that board
point
action.
legally, and that's my point, you know, as far as protocol. I mean, not what my opinion is, how the emotion of it. I think you have to really look as to, you know, who authorized something like that, and if the board did or if the board did not. So.
So I think what would be fair is to plan to put this on the next month's agenda and have all the facts, and then the board could consider, if it wasn't already voted on, they could certainly consider that as action at the next meeting.
Right, we can moving forward, we could also consider it if it wasn't, so, it doesn't prohibit it.
You're not
Thank you.
You're not dead. Yeah, you're not dead in the water yet, Jerry.
Next on the agenda is Thomas Robertson. Oh, excuse me, I missed someone. Thomas, I can't read that. Poland?
Pound.
Is he still here?
No. He left.
Okay, Tom, you're up.
He sent me a text message. I got it too.
Obviously, I'm Thomas
3.5
Robinson, as
hours.
announced. So one of the things, in fairness and time, is one of my suggestions are that maybe we do some committee reports bi-monthly or every other month, so that we can cut down that committee time. The important ones, of course, doing every month. That would be one thing. My other question is actually for Jerry while I'm here tonight, and it is about the sewer system, or whatever we want to call it, that we were supposedly doing on a section-by-section basis to prepare ahead of the hurricanes, that it was cleaned out. Are you familiar with it?
Jim would be more familiar. I'm familiar with the concept and that we do it here, but I don't have the details of what
And I
we've
know
done
the
yet.
reason I'm asking about that is we tried to get it done before hurricane season when it was there. So is it in process at this
Yeah,
point?
I think the only thing that I've been told we're missing is phase 3, and we're working with Taylor Morrison, and we have mentioned hurricane as a tool to try to get them to.
Well, this would be more for phase 1 and 2. That's our expense.
I will get an answer from you from Jim, but I don't know the details of when they were done. But Jim has told me that the only thing we're outstanding is phase 3 right now.
Two more things. First of those two is, based upon what I've heard tonight from the committee reports, I'll make a suggestion that we start having some situation where we have a chair and a vice chair, that the vice chair somehow comes over and becomes the chair when the chair steps down or doesn't come back on the committee, because it seems like we were not knowing what the last committee did, and that's a concern that we're going back from scratch at this particular point, because not knowing what's on the gates and what, not the gates, who's responsible for what on our exteriors and common grounds, it just sounds like that committee would know if there's somebody that's staying on that committee, be able to do that. That's a suggestion. The second one would be is I'd love to see a CenturyLink full report from what went in and what has actually come out of that. And I would love to see that in a month or two, if that's even possible. It's kind of just putting down numbers, but I think we need to understand where that's going. And I'm also going to say, Scott, thank you. It seems like every project has only one funding source. It's always, and I'm singing this song for more than one time. Everything can't come out of the CenturyLink account. If it's supposed to be there to hopefully build a clubhouse, either say no clubhouse, and then you can rate it all you want, but I think we need to understand that account going forward, what comes out, where it's going, and it's going to cost us more to run this whole HOA, and I think a certain portion of it needs to be brought back into the regular HOA funds that we can dedicate, I don't know what it is, $25 a house, $30 a house, every month to be able to pay our bills, because things go up. It's just natural. Our dues have stayed the same, and that's great. But things need to be moved and put aside. If there's $55,000, $2,000, $4,000, $7,000 a month goes into general account, and then you know what's left, and then you either plan a clubhouse or you stop, and then we just do the things that we need for the rest of our community.
The board did pass a resolution in March.
Excuse me?
The board did pass a resolution in March for a diversions and distributions from the CenturyLink since its inception,
What
and
I'm
that is
saying, what I
underway.
asked for has been already said.
The board
Yes,
is
that was
already-
March, and this is May.
Well, it's, we
The
had to
board
sit
has
the finance
requested it,
committee.
and the finance committee is working on it at this point in time,
And when can we see it?
when we get it done.
It was March, and this is May. It's 2 months later. I don't know. It seems to be simple.
It's not the only thing they're
Journal.
doing. It's in the priority list.
And it goes back to 2000.
Can we
Goes
get a
back to
commitment
2016.
somehow for the board that it will be here in 60 days?
It's not fair to give a timeline, Tom. Trust me.
I know,
when
but it's
we are,
already 60
we are
days and we
all
haven't seen it.
well, committees were not even formed until last month.
No, committees have been
So-
ongoing, and that's why I go back to the chair and the vice chair, because the committees are still going on. It's the same committees, there's just people are different because we don't have the opportunity in those committees to have a structure that allows the continuity to pass from committee to committee.
Well, it's not that,
Chair, vice chair.
honestly, it's, we allowed everybody that volunteered for committees to stay
You're
on the
right.
committee. These
And
people
that's what I'm
chose to
saying.
go off.
We can amend the things to say, we have a chair and a vice chair, that the vice chair we know will become the chair when the chair steps down. We need continuity in our committees.
But what I'm saying is if the people don't want to volunteer, we
Then they
can't
don't
force
volunteer.
them to come back,
You're
and
right.
that was our problem.
And that's why you put it in there,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
accept that.
Yeah.
If somebody steps down, they step down.
Right.
The next vice chair
Gotcha.
makes that commitment. It's a 2-year commitment.
I think
No,
everybody
it's a
agrees
one-year
with the
commitment.
problem, for sure.
They're one-year
And that's
terms.
why I'm
Okay,
saying the vice
is
chair
there
has to be a
anything else
2-year
that we need to
commitment.
discuss here? If not,
Go
I'm ready to
ahead.
go home. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and putting up for the entire length of the meeting.